This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody.
Nailed it.
Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
We're gonna have our listeners grade our read skills.
You don't
right?
want that answer. I've seen it in the comments. You don't want that answer.
I want to know.
Unless you want to be
better
done
job.
with the responsibility of it. You don't want that answer. In the chat, who's better at the ad reads?
I got to redeem myself today. I'm back in studio, and I got to be awesome.
I don't know.
At the reads.
I saw the comments
I'm gonna
last
be
week. I
really
think the
good
people
at the
decided.
reads.
I saw the YouTube comments last week. I think the people
This
decided.
is an ongoing thing. It's not over. It's not over. It's a 7-game series. That was just game 1.
So do I get a redemption shot for answering the phone?
You were terrible at that.
couldn't
You're
figure
out.
that out.
You're horrible at it. You're done. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22, here with you for the next couple of hours. Back in studio, back from the Senior Bowl. Had a really fun trip down there to Mobile. We'll talk a little bit of Senior Bowl leftovers today. I am sure a draft. I know all you guys want to chat with us about that. I'm getting some headway with my draft prep right now. Between the Senior Bowl and the Combine, it's usually a little bit of a lull from a news perspective with the team, and I really try to hammer the top 50 or so that I'm set up for the Combine in a good spot, and I feel like I'm starting to make some headway. So I've got some recency bias takes.
Oh, we can do recency bias players?
I've got some, just some draft takes that
have some recency bias
in my
players.
mind, but I do want to talk a little bit off the top here about some of the coaching staff updates. We didn't talk about it last week because we focused on the Senior Bowl, but a lot of, Thomas Brown, Doug Marrone, Todd Downing, like these hires have happened either when I was in Mobile or over the last week or so. So we'll get to that. And I also have to get something off my chest about this Super Bowl week. Okay. And I will get to that here in a second as well. But before we do, hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places, and easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. Okay, so can I get this off my chest real quick about the Super Bowl? And you don't have to partake because I'm going to take a little subtle jab at your station maybe in this rant. But I just got to say, and this is not about me being a butthurt Patriots fan that the Chiefs are getting all these flowers this week. They're in the Super Bowl. They're a dynasty. They deserve their flowers. I just got to be honest. I do not find it at all entertaining to discuss Patriots, Chiefs, Belichick, Reed, Kelsey, Gronk, Mahomes, Brady, and comparing the dynasties over and over and over and over again. We did it yesterday on our show, so it's not just your station. It's everywhere. And right now in this Super Bowl week. And just as a consumer, I just don't think that it's entertaining. Like I don't find any real entertainment value from comparing these two dynasties. I don't understand why we have to constantly do it. It's nauseating. There's other things to talk about in this town right now. The Patriots offseason is in full swing. They have a new head coach. They have a lot to do roster-wise. They have a high draft pick. They have a lot of cap space in free agency. The Celtics and the Cavs played a great basketball game last night. The Bruins, I have no idea what's going on with them in terms of which direction they're going to go in, but they keep on sucking me back in with games like last night and then throwing me back out because they'll probably lose again tonight with the way that they're going. But
don't forget the Red Sox are in like week whatever of the Alex Bregman saga.
Yeah, oh yeah, sure. And pitchers and catchers is soon, right?
That is probably like in a week or two, yeah.
Remember when like Truck Day used to be like a massive
That was earlier
deal?
This week. Yeah, I know.
It doesn't matter anymore. My whole point about, though, with the Chiefs, we don't have to do this constant comparison thing. We don't. We don't have to do it, and I feel like we do it for the main reason of just trolling Patriots fans. Because you know that Patriots fans are just going to get sensitive about it, and then you just start trolling them about it, and you're trying to incite that side of things, because in reality, it doesn't matter. It's not going to take away from either team, whether you think the Patriots run was better or the current Chiefs run is better. It doesn't take away from either team. It's just no one's going to move. Everyone's going to have their take on it. I don't understand why it's such a big topic. I don't.
Yeah, I mean, look, even if the Chiefs do win, Mahomes would be at 4, which is just over halfway to Brady. So, all right, you're just coming out of the locker room. The Patriots, and this is what gets lost in the Mahomes-Brady stuff. It's what gets lost in the Patriots-Chiefs stuff is sustainability and his longevity. And I know, longevity merchant. Do you realize how hard it is to have a longevity-like career in the NFL? I don't think people understand how difficult that is. So even if the Chiefs win, congratulations, you matched, pick one. You matched 01 to 04, you matched 14 to 19, or 14 to 18. You matched one of those. Still got a whole other half-assed the dynasty to go, right? So, to your point, what else are you talking about from this game? What else are you going to talk about? We just did this.
What do you mean
we just did Chiefs Eagles 2 years ago?
Okay, well that was my whole take about the game in general, is that I just thought this was the worst possible outcome.
It was.
Boring it
absolutely was.
But I just think that, again, we keep on having to come back to this comparison between the Chiefs and the Patriots, and I don't find it compelling. I don't find it compelling. I think that there's really it's premature in a lot of ways, like you just mentioned, but it's also just significantly different. It's a different way. It's a different approach. You have a coach in Andy Reid who is a offensive-minded players coach by most accounts versus Bill Belichick, who's the total antithesis of that. I don't understand it. I think it's not Chiefs Catch-22, right?
No, I think we all have some
Chiefs
fatigue.
Unfiltered. It's not the 98.5 The Sports Hub, the home of the Kansas City Chiefs, right? We got to move on. We all have to move on and stop talking so much about the Chiefs. That's
the reality. Look, I'll give them this. If you're there, you're getting talked about, and they're there, and that's why we all have Chiefs fatigue, because they keep being there. Your boy Josh Allen could have prevented this. He didn't.
No, I wanted him
Lamar
to.
Jackson had his chance to prevent this. And Mark Andrews dropped that. Well, I guess he turned the ball over a couple times too. But the Bengals could have prevented this if they didn't lose to the Patriots in week 1, right? Everybody's had their chances. Maybe the Patriots are in the mix next year. Hopefully they're in the mix of teams that can prevent this. I think they're probably still a year or two away from that overall. But until somebody beats them, it's going to keep being a thing. So somebody's got to beat these guys already.
God, it's not even about the Chiefs though. I don't even care. It's not. I'm not sensitive about the Chiefs being good.
No, I understand. Look,
just,
this is
I
what
hate
people
the
felt.
I don't think it's interesting.
I think people felt this way about the Patriots. The Patriots go back to Super Bowl and it's, we're going to do Brady and Belichick legacy talk again for a week. I get it. If you're there that much, there's the fatigue. The Warriors. We were all fatigued with the Warriors because they were back there every year. And it's just, that's what happens. Felger did this. I don't know if you heard this part of it yesterday, but I thought it was an interesting conversation. Are dynasties good for sports? So, and Felger
I think a villain is good for sports.
A villain is good for sports, but the villain does not equal a dynasty, and there's a tipping point there. And I think they are and they aren't. I don't think you can make a blanket statement about it, but it's an interesting case that if you have one team dominate the league for an extended period of time, is that good or bad? You always hear this with UConn women's basketball, right? We heard it with the Patriots for years. Were the Patriots good for the sport? What they were doing, what the Warriors were doing, were they good for the sport? You hear that with these teams, and I think there is a tipping point where you stop becoming a villain and there becomes a fatigue to it. And it's that's not to say I don't like that the Patriots dynasty happened. I obviously loved it, but that to me is the more interesting conversation this week. Are the Chiefs good for the NFL? For years and years, it was Alabama football good for college football. You had all these people that were turned off by college football because, it's the same teams every year. And you look at what happened this year when you got new teams, and it was a very exciting season. So that's the more interesting conversation to me this week. And if the Chiefs lose, maybe that kind of changes it. But, is it good? When it's you don't want teams to just be alternating good and bad, good and bad. You want some sustained success because you want people to be familiar with the elite teams. But I do think there's a tipping point where, again, that fatigue kicks in.
Yeah. All right. We spent 9 minutes on this. That was 9 more minutes than I wanted to.
We are a football show. It is Super Bowl week. We should discuss the Super Bowl.
But I just keep coming back to the same thing. And I'll throw a little stray at your station, which I listen to your station a lot. I'm a fan of your station. So this isn't me coming at it like screw sports radio. I love it. I listen to it all day in the car. But the thing that I come back to is I was in the car driving home from here yesterday for 45 minutes. They spent 40 minutes talking Chiefs-Patriots dynasty comparison. I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it this week. I gotta listen to something
before we wrap
else.
it up, because you didn't really answer it, I'm going to throw Felger's question back at you.
Yeah.
Are dynasties good for sports? are dynasty for like leagues?
I would say yes, because greatness is good. I think if there's too much parity, then it brings how good really are these teams that we're watching.
You can't be great without being a dynasty?
It depends on your definition, I guess, of dynasty, but I don't think so.
I would say 3 or more championships in a 5-year span.
Okay, so I disagree with that. I suppose maybe a little bit, because I think you can be, I don't know if I would necessarily call it a dynasty, but like if you win multiple titles in like a decade, right? Like you're still a great team of that decade. Is that a dynasty? Like it could be broken up, right?
So I think
hear what I'm saying?
I think you can be great without being a dynasty. There have been great teams that weren't dynasties. Like I think one of the most, look at the 2000 Ravens, and that defense was great. I know there's shortcomings on offense. That defense was great. That team was a dynasty, and that still held up as an example of greatness, right? Or the, who are some of the other teams like who won a Super Bowl or even just went and kind of disappeared? They lost, but the 2015 Panthers, that was a great football team. They had Cam Newton, who had one of the best quarterback seasons in recent memory.
Yeah.
Greg Olsen was awesome that year. That defense was amazing. That was a great football team.
Sure.
Obviously, it was not a dynasty. They didn't even win one. But people will call that team great, and they should.
Were they great?
I'm trying to think of a better example. I
don't know. I think that there are a lot of teams that were like that.
Like
a great team that's not a dynasty, to me, is like the greatest show on turf, right? They won one Super Bowl.
That's true. They came up short. That's a better example. I know I went to the Panthers.
They went to a second one, obviously, as we know very well.
Yeah.
They weren't a dynasty by definition, but they're one of the best teams of all time.
All right. How about I got another one for you.
Yeah.
The Kyle Shanahan 49ers.
No, they haven't won anything yet.
So you wouldn't say that's a great team?
I think they've had great teams, but they haven't won. So they're not.
So this might you can be great. You can be great without being a dynasty. You can be great, You
might have swayed me, but that's you tricked me there.
I know.
I had to say they were great.
Honestly, greatest show on turf is a perfect example of this. Like,
it's a flash in the pan.
Who is the greatest show on turf? Really haven't had a team like that like kind of hung around briefly, was amazing for a short period of time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Who would that be? I mean, I get maybe if the Eagles lose this one and then kind of fall off, but I don't think they're going to fall off. Like, they have a ton of talent.
It depends on how you view the Eagles in terms of their regimes, right? Because Doug Peterson was the coach of this team that won the Super Bowl. It was Carson Wentz and Nick Foles that were the quarterbacks. So the quarterback and the head coach for this iteration of the Howie Roseman Eagles is different, but it's still Howie Roseman running the show.
I would say,
and a lot of the players are still the same.
3 Super Bowl appearances in 8 years. Even if they win this one, 3 Super Bowl appearances in 8 years, you win 2. Is that a dynasty? No. Is that a great run? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's what's good. Like, that's what's good. You want a bunch of teams like that.
Yeah.
But I think when you get to the Chiefs, or again to go back to the Warriors, or the Alabama football, UConn women's basketball, like that's where I think you maybe start to lose people, because there is an element of, we know what happens. There's an element of predictability. Not to take anything away from anybody who's a part of those teams, like the Patriots. Like, again, I love that it happened as a Patriots fan. The people who are part of those teams should be proud of it. They should not feel like they let the sport down. But it's an interesting juxtaposition.
So the one thing that I always look at in the Super Bowl is
from the YouTube comments, Legion of Boom Seahawks is exactly the team we were looking for.
Sure. They're very similar to the greatest show on turf.
Yeah, exactly.
Won, went to another, didn't win.
It's probably the last team like that.
What I always look at with the Super Bowl matchup is how did we get here and what can we learn from it?
Yep.
In terms of roster building and team building, because that's what we both of us nerd out about 24/7. So the Chiefs model is, in my opinion, you can't expect to replicate, because you have one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time.
Like the Patriots model for years and years.
We're not going to luck into Patrick Mahomes, right? Like that's just not going to happen. Drake May might be great. He's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. He's not going to be Tom Brady, right? So you have that element of it with the Chiefs. With the Eagles, I look at a much more replicable model of how they've done this, and I think Howie Roseman is one of the best general managers
Yeah.
in sports right now, because of the way that he has his tentacles on every single avenue of roster building, every single way of finding talent, trades, free agency, draft, undrafted free agency. Like, they do it all in Philadelphia. They traded for A.J. Brown. They drafted blue chip players at the top of the draft from big time programs, Georgia, Alabama with Devontae Smith, free agency with Saquon Barkley, right? Like, they went out and they added in all avenues around a good quarterback, but I wouldn't call Jalen Hurts a great quarterback, right? He's a good quarterback, and he's good in that offense and what they ask him to do. And in a lot of ways, we always talk about the net neutral quarterback, or making it easier on the quarterback in general. I know people hate that term, the net neutral quarterback, when we use that one. But just making it easier on the quarterback in general. And I look at what Philadelphia has done, and I think they've done a masterclass of that for Jalen Hurts.
Excellent job.
Building the offensive line. Now, a lot of that predates Jalen Hurts. Lane Johnson was there before Jalen Hurts got
remember,
there.
they didn't go through a period where they were in the quarterback carousel. They thought they had their franchise guy. They drafted Jalen Hurts as a plan B. Franchise guy didn't work out. So they were always building it around, like, there was no in-between period. There was no, what for the Patriots would be like 2000 to 2023.
Right, so Lane Johnson's a future Hall of Famer in my book. He's a 4th overall pick, I think, in his draft, but that was quite a bit ago. Jordan Mailata is really the find. He's a former rugby player that converts to NFL football and was a 6th or 7th round pick, late day 3 guy.
Yeah, something like that.
Because of his
Was he
background
a pathway
in rugby.
player?
I don't think so. I think he was a draft pick. I think he was drafted in the 7th round, I want to say. So Jordan Mailata is now one of the best left tackles in football.
7th round, but he was a pathway player.
Okay. I didn't know you could be both. 7th round pick, turns out to be the best left tackle in football, or one of the best. Probably not the best, but top 5 at the position. That right there is fantastic. Look at their center position. Jason Kelce retires, one of the best centers of our era.
Yep.
And they handed over to Cam Jurgens, who is really good too. Not Jason Kelce, but he's
good player. Yep.
Good player. They haven't really missed a beat there. So you look at the way that they've built their offensive line. Mekhi Becton, taking a flyer on Mekhi Becton, putting him at guard instead of tackle. That's really worked out for them. That's really paid dividends. Saquon Barkley at running back, free agency signing. A.J. Brown, a trade. Dallas Goedert, 2nd round pick. Devontae Smith, 1st round pick. That offense and the way that offense is built is the mecca to me. Like, that's the dream. Is you have all great protection, great blocking, great running back, great skill players all around.
The dream for you is a great running back. Can we clip that so I have it?
Well, the point is that really, what does Jalen Hurts have to do? And I don't mean that he doesn't do anything, but I'm just saying that's about as good of a situation as any quarterback could be put in.
It's not so much what does he have to do, but it's paint by number, so he doesn't have to overextend himself. Right. The whole thing, remember with Drake May this year, me saying like his whole game, it felt like he was playing with an inner monologue of, fine, I guess I'll do it myself.
Yes.
Where when you have to do that constantly, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
So Jalen Hurts can, for lack of a better word, he can almost relax.
Yeah.
He can just go out there and kind of let loose, and he doesn't have so much to worry about because his clock's not getting sped up. He knows his receivers are in the right spot. He knows that they can go to the run game if they need to do it, and it just takes so much off his mind mentally and physically. He's not taking a bunch of hits behind that line that it allows him to play a lot more freely.
It allows them to hit the easy button a lot in terms of scheme and what they do. They do a lot of early down RPO stuff. They do a lot of zone read and things like that, where Jalen Hurts is just put in these situations where he has a lot of answers and puts the defense in a lot of schematic binds and really makes it easy for the quarterback. When you have a really good play action passing game, a really good RPO package for a quarterback like Jalen Hurts, not a lot of the game gets put on him in obvious drop back situations where it's like 3rd and 8 and he's got to make a play.
Yeah.
You maybe can whittle that down to 4 or 5 plays a game where it's truly on his shoulders to go out there and make a play. And then obviously it helps when you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith on the outside and Goddard too to help him with all that stuff. But I see with the Eagles, and you watch them in the NFC Championship game too, how much they RPO'd that defense to death, and they are just able to really just let Jalen Hurts kind of be a point guard. Like, he's just kind of a sidecar to what they're really doing offensively. And in a lot of ways, I would say Drake May has a higher ceiling than Jalen Hurts as a passer. I think Drake May has more physical talent in terms of his throwing ability, so maybe he doesn't need all that help. But why not, right? Like, why not build the offense around that, and why not have that much help? It obviously takes a while to build out, but I think the way the Eagles do it, the way that they allocate their resources, the way they spend over the cap, the way that they bring in guys in all avenues. I think if you're trying to model yourself after one of these franchises, it's absolutely the Philadelphia Eagles and what Howie Roseman's done. With that in mind, I want to segue to the coaching staff a little bit and talk some Patriots. We'll take some emails. We'll take some
So you're
calls.
just not even going to talk about this tremendous defense they've built.
Phillies?
Yeah.
No, I'm not that interested.
The defense is unbelievable.
It's good defense. I don't know if it's unbelievable, but it's good defense.
That front's awesome, man. Come on.
It's good front. They've done a nice job, and obviously Vic Fangio has really put it all together for them.
Right.
I would say that, some of the bigger players that have stood out to me from the Eagles, though, is in their back end. Quinyon Mitchell has been an awesome rookie for them. Cooper DeJean, a guy that all of us liked a lot in the draft, has been very, very good. And Zach Bond, who's going to be a free agent, has really put it all together in terms of the middle of the field for them. At linebacker, can cover a lot of space from that linebacker position, whether it's dropping back in coverage or it's going sideline to sideline against the run. And then obviously they have the guys up front, but they always kind of had the guys up front to me.
Yeah.
They always had good defensive lines in Philadelphia, even going back to when the Patriots played them in the Super Bowl in 2018. But they've now evolved, I think, to having a much stronger secondary. So they have a great defense.
Well, I guess my point is, you broke down how they built the offense. Quinyon Mitchell, first-round pick. Jalen Carter, first-round pick. But you have, Zach Bond, who was a find.
Free agent.
You have it's that same
Josh
thing where
Sweat.
Josh Sweat was kind of a find.
Yep.
Where did he was like a third, fourth-round pick?
I have to look at. I always get him and Montez Sweat confused.
Sweat was first-round pick.
Yeah.
Double check that, but it's like, by the way, Josh Sweat, free agent. You're not gonna get there needs to be a balance. You can't build the entire thing through splash and free agency. You can't build.
He was a fourth-round pick in
okay.
2018. So
he's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Well, because draft and develop.
Yeah.
And I know people probably don't want to hear that phrase as it relates to the Patriots, but they were able to hit on first-round picks immediately. They were able to get mid-round guys to grow into their roles. They were able to get big-name free agents to step in and make plays, and they were able to find guys in free agency too. That's how you're going to do it. So as we go through this offseason and talk about, if the Patriots are going to really accelerate this, it's not just going to be, all right, we signed Josh Sweat and Tet McMillan in free agency, and we drafted, Will Carter and Jaden Higgins at the top of the draft, right? You are going to have to find guys in free agency and the draft. That shouldn't be your plan. Your plan going in shouldn't be, all right, we're going to get all these sleepers, but you have to be able to do that. Belichick was amazing at that. Yeah. And guys like Kyle Van Noy is a trade, but I'd consider him like a find, right?
Yeah.
Van Noy was a guy that was a find. Getting Wes Welker in the nature they did was a find. Right. Guys like that, you're still going to need to be able to do that in order to really hit that apex if you want to speed this thing up. And you have to be able to focus on both sides of the ball. You can't just hammer offense. You can't just hammer defense. There needs to be a balance, and you hope you get guys, with premium assets that can carry their side and give you that time to spread the assets out more.
And I also think at this point with the Eagles, too, you get to a point where you're such a well-oiled machine, and we know this with the Patriots as well, that now they can take some risks. Like, Jalen Carter was a risk.
Right.
Especially where they drafted him. He fell. He probably should have been the number one overall pick in his draft, and he fell because of the off-field stuff. But that was a risk. Like, that could have gone either way. And if you don't have the infrastructure to support that kind of player, then that could go the bad way, right? Like that, and maybe he's not on the team anymore because he gets into another situation. And now he's one of the best defensive tackles in the league, and that goes a long way too with some of these flyers that teams like the Eagles can afford to take. I would also put in a much different way, but in a similar category, like paying a running back like Saquon Barkley is a luxury item and you can do that when you're a team like the Eagles. When we talk about the Patriots moving forward, like this is why I won't even entertain a running back when we discuss running backs like Ashton Dempsey. I won't entertain it because you can't be taking luxury items when you're the Patriots. You need to be taking players that are foundational elements of this team. Dropping Saquon Barkley, because you made fun of me for saying great running back earlier. Dropping Saquon Barkley into that team is how you maximize a great running back. That's how you truly have a great running back make sense.
Well, I
Christian
more so meant it in
McCaffrey
the
with the
sense
San
that
Francisco 49ers. Like, it's the same situation.
I more so meant that you acknowledging that running backs can be great instead of saying they're all interchangeable.
I think they can be great, but I don't think they move the needle unless they're put into situations like McCaffrey in San Francisco, Barkley with the Eagles. I mean,
Derrick Henry with the Ravens.
Right. Another good one. Derrick Henry with the Ravens. And that is where I feel like the league is caught up in understanding they don't have zero value, but they just have to be put in situations where they can make an impact, like the examples that we just named. All right, let's talk a little coaching staff, and then we'll open it up to your phones, 855-PATS-500. We got plenty of emails coming in as well at podcasts@patriots.com. I want to start with Thomas Brown. I think, and again, I should put this out there. This is all reportedly. None of this is official. All these titles are reports. None of it's official yet with the team.
Just the coordinators.
Just the coordinators. So we're all going off of reports here in terms of titles. But it sounds like Thomas Brown, who is the interim coach for the Bears last year, interim play caller for the Bears last year as well, midway through the season taking over there in Chicago, has been an offensive coordinator, has been an assistant head coach, has been an interim head coach, is going to be the pass game coordinator and tight ends coach for the Patriots under Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel on the offensive side of the ball. What I'm interested about with this Thomas Brown hire is which tree of West Coast offense that he's been involved in is he tapping into? Is he trying to bring Shanahan-McVay elements from his Rams days with Sean McVay, or is he trying to bring Frank Reich, Andy Reid elements from his time in Carolina with Frank Reich? There's only 1 year, barely, with Frank Reich. I don't even think he made it the full season, right, in Carolina.
Reich didn't. Thomas Brown did. Reich didn't.
So I don't know how much experience he really has in that. But the one element that I look at with Thomas Brown that I'm hoping for is that he is going to bring some of those Kansas City, Philadelphia, Frank Reich, Andy Reid elements to this offense, because I do think that Drake May is at his best in the gun. I don't think he's at his real comfort level as an under center quarterback. When you talk about a lot of the elements that you bring in from a Shanahan West Coast offense, you're talking a lot of under center elements, outside zone, bootleg, motion, play action, that kind of stuff. I would like to see a lot more of like the Philadelphia, Kansas City version of RPO, gun run, that sort of thing with the motion and window dressing than the McVay offense necessarily. And I'm hoping that maybe that's where Thomas Brown comes in with Josh McDaniels. And we've heard a lot of Josh McDaniels' offense is going to blow all of our socks off here with all the new innovations and things like that. But what are your thoughts on Thomas Brown and what he's going to bring to the table here?
So just, to what you said, based on the other people they've hired and talked to, doesn't it seem like it's going to be the Frank Reich, Andy Reid direction of things? So
yeah,
the report right now is that Thomas Brown's going to be the pass game coordinator.
Yeah,
and so I wonder if, and I like that they're doing that. He's the first pass or run game coordinator in the history of the Patriots. They've never done that before. If he's going to be the one kind of helping to tie the traditional tie that stuff to the traditional McDaniel stuff. And if he's going to kind of end up being, we used this term a couple weeks ago, that translator, right, for Drake May to help tie the two together.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think he's a good hire. I think my big reaction was, he has an impressive resume. And obviously the last few places he's been in hasn't worked out. But by all accounts, it didn't work out. It wasn't because of him that it didn't work out, right? So this is a guy that you would think is going to have another shot at being a coordinator soon. And for all we talked about when we did the Mike Vrabel, Ben Johnson thing about, you don't want a coordinator that's going to jump ship right away. You want, and McDaniels gives you that stability. The flip side of that is when you have a coordinator that's kind of a roadblock, it can be harder to hire positional coaches because they know there's no room to move up internally.
Yeah.
And you can always go elsewhere and get a new job, but who likes to move, right? There's room to move up internally. So to get a guy like Thomas Brown, who has that runway ahead of him, and it's not down the road, it's right there, has that runway ahead of him, to get him to come here with Josh McDaniels in place, I think speaks very strongly to Mike Vrabel's program. It tells you that this is a program, what he's selling, whatever it is he's saying in these meetings, that guys want, and I think to Drake, it speaks to Drake May too, like, guys want to be here. Guys feel like this is a good situation, and even if that immediate advancement isn't in front of them internally, they still feel like this is the right place for them to be. So I think being able to hire a guy like Thomas Brown, and as impressive as Thomas Brown is for who he is and his resume and all of that, I think speaks to what Mike Vrabel is pitching. And coaches and players are different, but is that something that's maybe indicative of what's ahead in free agency?
Yeah, it definitely feels a little bit like Thomas Brown is overqualified for the job.
That's what I'm saying. But he's here.
But pass game
reportedly.
Yeah, pass game coordinator and tight ends coach, though, is a pathway to offensive coordinator. Right. Tommy Rees had that title with the Cleveland Browns last year, and now he's their offensive coordinator.
But it's not, pending something crazy. He's not going to be able to do that here.
Correct, but he's going to interview, I would think, next year, he'll have interviews for offensive coordinator jobs. And this title keeps him in that pipeline. Whether it's here or it's elsewhere, his name is going to continue to be in that pipeline. But what I go back to, again, just schematically with all this, because he is going to be the pass game coordinator, is can they bring in some of those Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia elements to this offense and get some of that stuff in here for
Just say RPOs. You're talking about RPOs.
Yeah, why does it matter?
Because you got all excited about RPOs. What was it, last week, 2 weeks ago?
Love RPOs.
Yeah.
I love RPOs for Drake. I think the biggest reason why I liked him for Drake May is just watching teams like Kansas City, watching teams like Philadelphia, watching teams like Buffalo. It always puts the defense in a position where they have to guard 6 guys, right? They have to guard the 5 skill players and they have to guard the quarterback. So you're putting the defense in this position where now all of a sudden everybody on the field that's eligible to touch the football is a threat. And that is really intriguing to me. I understand that it's not a cure-all. They're not going to all of a sudden start running a bunch of RPOs and be the number 1 offense in the league, right? That's not what I'm getting at. But until they start to really leverage Drake May's athletic ability, whether that's moving pockets, whether that's RPO, whether that's read option, whatever the case may be. And I hear like a lot of pushback on this about keeping him healthy. And my rebuttal to that is this is how he's got to play. Like if he's got to figure out a way to keep himself healthy. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Because if you take away this element of his skill set, then he's playing left-handed. Like he's playing with one hand tied behind his back. So in order for him to be great, I do think that he's got to have these types of elements within an offense. That doesn't mean you have to turn him into Cam Newton and turn him into a battering ram and have him run inside the tackles 10 times a game.
No, you have the Joe Milton package for that.
Sure, but you have to be cognizant of what you're calling in terms of that kind of stuff. But again, I go back to this Eagles offense. Go watch the Eagles in the NFC Championship game, or go watch the Eagles, what we're going to see on Sunday in the Super Bowl, and watch like how many real hits Jalen Hurts takes on these types of schemes. I'm not talking about hits in the pocket, when he's under pressure, but real hits in terms of running the football, in terms of running these type of schemes, is not as many as you think. So as long as Drake May is cognizant of it, and they're cognizant of how where they're putting him into those types of situations, then they'll be all right. I in a lot of ways, I think it's better than having him just run around scrambling like he did at times last year, because it's planned, right? It's coordinated. Right. There's a scheme to it of where he's going to be going and what direction he's going to be going in. So I think that's big, and I keep coming back to how do you maximize his skill set. I think the only way to maximize his skill set is to use him like all these quarterbacks. Use him like Hurts, use him like Allen, use him like Mahomes. Like if you don't do those types of things, I just don't think you're going to get the most out of the players. So it's on everybody to keep him healthy, but I think you have to if you're really going to get this offense going where it needs to go. Next one, Doug Marrone. offensive line coach. It sounds like that's gonna be his title, or at least that's gonna be where most of his involvement's gonna be in. I know there are some mixed reviews from his last couple stops, Alabama, New Orleans with the Saints. Wasn't great in either one of those stops, but this is another veteran coach that's been around football for 100 years, that's coached offensive line for a very, very long time. So this isn't going to be a guy that's new to the gig. This is not Scott Peters, who's never coached an offensive line room before. This is an experienced coach. I understand that maybe his track record recently is spotty, but everything that I've heard about Doug Marrone is overwhelmingly positive about his ball knowledge, just his knowledge of the game, his knowledge of offensive line play, and all those types of things. And I don't think it's a small thing that Houtling is also coming with him, who's coaching with the Titans with Vrabel, who's also been a head offensive line coach. So you're essentially going to have two guys in that room now that have both run the room before. So I feel like that's really a lot of brain power to coach the offensive line. And there is a tie there with Josh McDaniels through Bill O'Brien with Doug Marrone. And that's big in this offense. You have to have the coordinator and the offensive line coach in unison, in sync, because a lot of this offense this is how we're going to design the game plan. How are we going to block it up? And the coordinator and McDaniels is going to rely a lot on Doug Marrone to help him with the schematics of how they're going to block things and all that kind of stuff. So it's an important relationship. I think that's the most important in my mind, in this system especially, is offensive coordinator and offensive line coach.
Yeah, and I think he's a good hire. Look, I think Peters did a good job last year, but Marrone, like you said, his experience, he didn't have a ton of talent to work with in New Orleans that last stop. Like, it's going to come down to, if they don't give him any talent, it's not going to look good, just like it did with Peters. But as a guy that's been around a long time, he's done it, and the track record speaks for itself. So I thought that was a good hire. We'll see if, like you had said, is he going to be the offensive line coach? Is he going to be a consultant working with the offensive linemen? Something like that. We'll see, but we know he can do it. They just got to get him the talent to work with.
Yeah. I come back to with him. I think that Doug Marrone is probably going to be more big picture, schematic, X's and O's. Again, this is the game plan. This is the opponent. These are the runs we want to put in. These are the pass plays we want to put in. How are we going to block these things? I think that's where Doug Marrone's expertise comes in. Jason Houtling is going to probably be the assistant offensive line coach, but might be the offensive line coach with Doug Marrone as like a senior assistant. We'll see how that all shakes out. He, to me, is going to be the technique guy. Like, I think he's going to be the guy that's going to be training up Will Campbell, or is going to be training up Ariante Ursary, or whoever ends up being the pick for the Patriots, and Caden Wallace and the leftovers from last year. Like, those guys, I feel like, from a technique standpoint, are going to more work with Houtling, and Doug Marrone is going to be more in terms of the big picture overseer. And I think the similar thing with the wide receivers coach, Todd Downing, is the reported hire for wide receivers coach. I have some reservations about this one. I think you do too. Yeah. This is probably my least favorite hire of the entire staff so far with Downing. It's not necessarily because of his reputation as a play caller, because I don't really care, because he's not going to call plays. In fact, I think he's probably at best third in line to call plays. If, God forbid, the worst case scenario happens, I would assume that Thomas Brown would be. I
mean, he has a coordinator title. He should be. I also wonder if even Doug Marrone would be ahead of him.
Yeah, so I'm not too concerned about him touching that aspect of it. What I am concerned about is his lack of experience coaching wide receivers specifically, and just in general. They have really struggled with the development of that position, not just the mental development, but also in a lot of ways physical development as well. So a guy that's never coached wide receivers before is now going to come in here, and he's going to have Jalen Polk. He's maybe has Javon Baker, depending on if he makes a team. He's probably going to have a draft pick that they use a pretty high draft pick on at wide receiver as well. My expected vision with Todd Downing, McDaniels' offense is very conceptual. They run a system that has a lot of conversions. There's a lot of options. There's a lot of sight adjusts and reads and things like that are involved in this route tree. And then there's also a lot of concepts, like, you have to know what the other guys in the concept are doing. Everything has sort of a domino effect on each other. It's not just go run a 9 route, right? You have to understand what the guy next to you is doing. My guess is that Downing, with his coordinator experience, is probably coming in to teach the concepts of the system and teach the big picture, kind of like we were just talking about with Doug Marrone. And maybe there's another shoe to drop in terms of a hire that has the technique expertise, the Taekwon Underwood type hire.
Right.
Is it Wes Welker? I would love that. I don't know if Wes Welker needs to take a demotion of that magnitude, going from a wide receivers coach with Miami to now basically an assistant wide receivers coach. But I would like to still see them bring in somebody that has an expertise in technique, fundamentals at the wide receiver position, releases, top of the route, catch point, all that kind of stuff, and then allow Todd Downing to kind of run the room.
Yeah, I'm with you right there. Like, this is a team that has struggled with wide receiver development for a long time. It's been quite the roadblock, so you'd hope that they get somebody with experience in talent development.
Yeah.
Downing teaching the offense makes sense, but you need a player developer in the building working with those guys, especially if you plan on taking a wide receiver high in the draft. I've said this, and this hire kind of reinforces it for me. As things stand right now, I don't know that I want them to take a receiver in the top 100 because I just don't know that the pieces are in place to bring that guy along. It doesn't mean they don't need a receiver. They absolutely do, but it has to be in the veteran market. It has to be a guy that is already developed, has proven himself in the league, can come in on day one and be ready to go. And there's just not a receiver in this draft that's going to be able to do that, even Ted McMillan or Travis Hunter. So, like, if they were to add, like, a Wes Welker as an assistant, that changes it a little bit for me. But they need somebody who has experience developing players at that position. They've kind of used that coach through multiple head coaches here now in different iterations as sort of a schematic guy. That's not a coach where you want a schematic guy for where this team is at right now. You need a teacher. And they've got to find somebody to be that assistant who can be that guy.
It's a good point. Really, with McDaniels going back, you had Mick Lombardi, you had Chad O'Shea, you had, like, to your point, they had schematic guys in that role.
Remember, wasn't it Nick Caserio at one point?
Maybe going back a ways, and Joe Judge was there for.
I know Joe Judge while being the special teams coordinator, which made no sense.
N'Keal Harry's rookie season. Caserio, it might have been. That sounds.
They had some front office guy who was like also the wide receivers coach for a season.
So
yeah, it was Nick Caserio in 2007 while he was.
Oh, that was going back a ways, but yeah.
I think there was one other time I might be forgetting, but anyway.
So yeah, but you're right. It is notoriously been a schematic coach, like a guy that's coming in to coach the X's and O's of the passing game. They almost use that role.
I might be thinking of Joe Judge, by the way. But.
Yeah, you almost use that role in a lot of ways, as a pass game coordinator.
Right.
And they never gave that official title out, like you mentioned. But in a lot of ways, that was what the wide receivers coach was. Here, especially with Chad O'Shea, who was basically their red zone coordinator. Like, he did a lot of the red zone work when he was in New England. So I think they kind of ran into a little bit of some roadblocks with some of these hires. Some of the guys that were McDaniels guys are under contract with other teams. And I think that did potentially add some kind of roadblocks or issues with staffing. I do think they would have had interest in Chad O'Shea coming back, but he's under contract with the Browns, seems happy in Cleveland, didn't want to move.
Right.
Carmen Brasillo with the Giants is running the offensive line with the Giants right now under Dable. He obviously wasn't available contractually as well. So guys like that maybe were part of the reason why, and I'm interested with those two in particular. I bring them up because we don't know what the future is for Dable or Kevin Stefanski in their head coaching position. So is there a chance that this is what they do this year, and then come next year, those guys, their head coaches get blown out, and then they end up coming back and being McDaniels guys? I think that's definitely possible. I want to move over to the defense side of the ball with one hire in particular that I thought was worth bringing up, Scott Booker, who's the reported safeties coach, secondary coach. I'm not exactly sure what his title is going to be. But Scott Booker was in Tennessee with Mike Vrabel and Terrell Williams for basically the whole time. I believe that those guys were there. And I look at Scott Booker, who was with Buffalo last year, by the way, coaching up their nickel corners and their secondary. He, to me, is tying now together the front end and the back end. We talked about this a little bit with Terrell Williams. Terrell Williams is a front seven guy. He's a defensive line guy. Those types of guys don't usually get super involved in coverage and things like that. It looks to me like Scott Booker is being brought in to basically be the pass game coordinator of the defense, and then you're going to have Terrell Williams running the front seven and running the pressures and things like that. So those two guys working together on marrying back end and front end, coverage with rush and things like that, I think is your brain trust along with Vrabel on the defensive side of the ball. So I think Scott Booker is an important hire. I think that's a name we should all know. And in terms of essentially, I wouldn't be surprised if I think he had a senior assistant title in Buffalo. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has a pretty high title here once it gets announced.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that sets up. I like his experience working with multiple spots in the secondary because they have so many guys in that secondary that play multiple positions. I think he's the kind of guy that can kind of maximize. They need to add, but the personnel that they have, I think he's a good fit for the personnel that they have. And, yeah, you have that through line of experience from Vrabel to Williams to Booker, and everybody should be on the same page day one.
It's cool. That side of the ball is getting the band back together from Tennessee, essentially, in more or less. And I think that's a good thing for the Patriots. I think Vrabel's going to now be able to truly run his defense. It's going to be a lot like what we saw, I'm sure, from the Titans over the years when he was there. And he's got his guys. Unlike on offense, where it's a little bit more of a mixed bag of who experiences and places that people have been and things like that. I'm not overly concerned about that part of it from the offensive side, but it is worth noting, I think, that there is a little bit more of a mixture there. Defensively, this is Vrabel's guys. Yeah. This is his staff on that side of the ball.
I'll go back to what I say when they hired Williams. I want it to be Mike Vrabel's defense. And that's not take anything away from Williams. Like, he's a good coach. But at the end of the day, this was one of the things with Gerard Mayo we talked about when it got rough. You hired Gerard Mayo in theory because of the job he did on the defensive side of the ball. Would he step in and correct the ship? That's what you want a defensive coach to do. He never did it. Vrabel seems like he's just going to be hands-on with it from day one, and then that sets up Josh McDaniels to run the offense, and I think this is essentially the setup they wanted last year, but now they have guys who have done it, and it's just going to make it a whole lot easier.
Last thing on the coaching staff, Greg Bedard had something out there as well about I think it was Greg, that Vrabel could call plays on defense. And I'm interested in that element of it because Terrell Williams has never called plays, at least that I know of, on the defensive side of the ball. Vrabel has, obviously, at Ohio State and in Houston as their defensive coordinator. How would you feel if Vrabel was the primary play caller? Do you like that? Do you like the CEO approach? Because you just brought it up, and I think it's a great point. Gerard Mayo never took ownership of that defense. Yeah. He never took ownership last year. We pounded the table on this show early, like first month of the season. Why isn't Gerard calling the defense? Now, Vrabel has that experience to tap into as a former head coach to be the CEO. He certainly has more chops and experience in that regard to pull it off in that respect. But you look at the way that a lot of these models are working now, there's a lot of that going on where even if you're a defensive guy, you're a defensive guy calling your defense, and you have the Josh McDaniels head coach offense calling the offense and running the show on offense. How would you feel if Vrabel's calling the defense?
I'd be okay with that. I don't have a problem with it. Like I said, I want it to be his defense, so that's definitely him putting his mark on it. I wonder if it's a situation where maybe he does that early. Yeah. And maybe eventually Terrell Williams, and when I say eventually, I mean over the course of a couple years, Terrell Williams or somebody else is kind of groomed to that. So Vrabel, once this thing's really built out, can focus more on the play-to-play of it, and, on both sides of the ball. But to get it started, I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I would actually entertain it. I think that there's a lot to be said about having experience as a play caller. I think it's a tough job, and I think it's a unique job in this sport that not everybody is ready for.
Especially on defense.
It's very unique.
I actually think it might be harder to call defensive plays than offensive plays.
Well, you're reacting.
Right,
on
exactly.
defense.
Offensive plays, like, you're setting the tone. Calling defensive plays is almost purely reactionary.
Yeah, a lot of what's cool about calling plays early on in games is that most of the time the offense, the script, like the opening script, a lot of people always chalk the opening script up to like what are the best game plan plays that you have to get off to a fast start, and that's certainly an element of it. But a lot of the opening script from the offensive standpoint is information gathering of how the defense is going to handle things. So if we show this formation, if we show this motion, if we show this look, how is the defense going to cover that? How are they going to react to that? And if they do A, then do we what's B, right? Do we have a counter to that? Or if they do B, can we counter with A? And so coordinators, good offensive play callers, will call plays early on in games. And every play that you call, you want to work. Like, I'm not saying that they're calling plays to have them not work, but a lot of coordinators will call plays early on in games, and it might not necessarily go off great, right? Like, it might not necessarily be a great play. And to the fan, you might say, well, why the heck did they call that play? But they might have called that play early in the game just to see what the defense was going to do and how they were going to defend it so that they could call a compliment to it later on. And that's what you get into that chess match. And defensively, that can be difficult. You know, you're reacting a lot to defense, to personnel grouping, formation, and then obviously play design. And on offense, you're kind of dictating those terms.
Right.
All right. Anything else on the coaching staff stand out to you?
And that's pretty much it. I just want to see who that other wide receivers coach is.
Yeah, I do think that would be good for them if they can hire a true technique assistant, offensive assistant to Todd Downing. I'm trying to get
Oh, it's not so easy, is it, huh?
Get the freaking thing to work.
It's not so easy to answer the phones.
Well, it's not my fault. I don't have a mouse. Maybe Marine can pull up the calls for us because this thing is not working, apparently.
Is it turned on?
I can't hear you.
Is it turned on?
Yes, and I flipped the switch the other way, too, to see if it will turn on that way. And hello. Can you pull him up and we'll figure out the mouse? Patty, yeah, pull up Patty. What's up, Patty? How we doing?
Good. How you guys doing this afternoon?
Good.
Evan, I got a task for you.
Okay.
You have to convince the rest of the PU guys that Will Campbell is a good pick at number 4.
I think that's going to be difficult, Patty.
I know, but just from my perspective, I mean, I don't know who's going to be there. I don't know who we're getting in free agency. I mean, this whole thing is hung up on or contingent upon like what we do in free agency. But I think the line's been so bad. I think you got to do the what is it? The draft one, sign one.
Soto, yeah.
Yep, Soto.
Our company slogan.
Yeah.
But also, like what I failed to say last week when I called into PU was like what Jeremiah said. What his write up on him. Like I don't think there's another guy like another national draft guy that's out there whose opinion I respect more than Jeremiah's. You guys obviously too, but you guys aren't really national guys. But I really just wanted to see what you guys thought of, or really Alex, because Evan, I know you kind of went over thoroughly what you thought of Will Campbell. If he measures out, you want him, and that's kind of where I'm at right now too. I just wanted to get Alex's perspective on him, and just what would be probably his biggest strength playing in this offense, and what would be his biggest weakness. And I'll take it off there, guys.
Thanks, Pat.
Thanks.
I'm picking the Eagles to win 31-20.
Nice.
That's all I got.
Nice.
Right.
We'll end it on a prediction of the Super Bowl. Thanks for the call, Patty. So Will Campbell, I've gone back and forth with Will Campbell.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be consistent. I'm starting to really believe in Will Campbell as an option for the Patriots. Not that I didn't before, but I'm trying to be consistent this year with it. And the main thing that I look at with Will Campbell that would give me any concern about playing tackle is that he does have a tendency to overshoot his landmark in his pass set and then open up the inside. We see that a lot with like inside counters getting to him and giving up that leverage. But how much of that is coachable? How much of that is him overcompensating for the lack of length and him having to get out to those rushers?
How much of that is having a quarterback that has zero consistency or pocket awareness?
Right. Those are the high level questions that people that are more nuanced with offensive line play than me need to answer in this organization, right? How much is that coachable? Is that correctable? Is that compensation for lack of length? That's where the lack of length to me shows up with Will Campbell. I don't see a big issue with him in terms of like establishing first contact and things like that being a major concern. I don't see that with his film. What I see is that he gets out of his set aggressively, overcompensates, and then gets beat to the inside by those twitched up rushers that he's going to see at this level. There's the one time that Kyle Kennard got him in that South Carolina game was with a little crossover to the inside. So that's an element that if you wanted to be anti-Will Campbell that you'd have to point to, but there's so many pros with his athleticism and his makeup that I feel like if it's correctable, if it's coachable, then it will get corrected and fixed.
And this isn't a guy that is like proportionally small.
Right. Like yesterday, not to cut you off. Yesterday, Paul got under my skin, as he normally does, because he brought up Isaiah Wynn. And I'm this is a totally different animal than Isaiah Wynn.
Isaiah Wynn was a guard in college.
Isaiah Wynn was tiny. By NFL standards, inside, outside, whatever, Isaiah Wynn was a small human to be playing offensive line.
Campbell's what, 6'6", 320?
Yeah, something like that.
So, no, he's big, he's powerful, he's so advanced technically for his age, which to your point, Evan, if that issue is coachable, this is a guy that can take coaching. This is a guy that knows how to improve his game. You mentioned that Kyle Kennard move that beat him in the South Carolina game. That was, I don't remember if it was his first play, but his first drive. He comes back and he adjusts and he handles that move 3 or 4 more times later in that game. He is a quick learner, which you want at that position. So does he come without faults? No, but if I were to tell you right now, Will Campbell's arms are 33.25 inches. You're sprinting that card up at 4. I don't even know you're trading down. You're sprinting that card up at 4. We'll see what the number is. If he comes in at 32.5, okay, we'll have another conversation. I would even say, like, the tough one, and so this is what it's going to be because it's going to be annoying, 32 7/8.
I'm in.
I'm in too. I'm in.
If you're getting all caught up on 1/8 of an inch of arm length, then you're missing the plot.
It's Rashawn Slater, right? It was 34 inches for years.
Yeah.
And then Rashawn Slater with 34-inch arms came in and was great. And then all the people who just stick to the spreadsheet, well, oh no, it was always 33. There was just never anybody good enough. And if Will Campbell's 32 7/8 and he comes in, you'll hear a bunch of people saying, oh no, it was always 32.5. There was just never anybody good enough. So this team needs a left tackle. I don't care where he would have ranked in last year's draft. I don't care, the standing of these other guys. Look, Abdul Carter's not going to be on the board.
Yeah.
If Abdul Carter's on the board, that's probably the one guy I'd take ahead of Campbell. Travis Hunter too, but I don't think either of them are going to be on the board. I think it's going to be one quarterback, Hunter and Carter, or Hunter, Carter, and maybe Mason Graham.
Yeah. Or
maybe Ted McMillan. So this team needs a left tackle. They need a left tackle. You know my little spiel that I like to give here.
Yes.
We've covered, the two of us, this is our 8th offseason. Jesus. We have never once done an offseason.
We're getting old, man.
I know. Don't focus on that part. Old. We have never once done an off. The first show we ever did together.
Yeah.
Do you know what it was? Do you remember what it was?
It was the 16 draft, maybe?
No, it was later than that. It was reacting to the Isaiah Wynn draft.
Okay.
Literally, the first show we did together.
I knew I was living in New York at the time, so I couldn't put it in.
The first show we did together back in the day for CL and Hess was hoping that the Patriots had found their left tackle for the next 10 years. Here we are 8 years later, and we are that guy was not the answer, and nobody since has been the answer. They need to fill this spot. Will Campbell is a quarter to a half an inch away from being a franchise left tackle. And there's no, assuming Carter's off the board, or assuming Hunter's off the board, there is no other clear-cut player that you're taking him over. I think he has to be the answer, assuming his arms check out.
I have no notes. Like, I totally agree. I just feel like in this draft in particular, you're looking to solve problems, right? You have major problems on the offensive line. You have major problems, you could argue, in terms of wide receiver and defensive line help as well. But nothing is more painstakingly obvious than the need on the offensive line. And you have a guy in Will Campbell, and I know people don't want to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. he's going to be a great offensive lineman.
Don't even go down this road.
But he's going to be great.
It's just I know. And
he's
worst case scenario, he's a guard. But
he's going to make the line better no matter where he plays. He really
but they
is.
need a tackle, and people hear that and say, "So you're going to take a guard at 4?" And
I know.
You started it with all these people 3 years ago.
That was different.
About the anti-guard stuff. Look,
that was we were talking about Cole Strange. We're not talking about Will
so
Campbell.
easy in this draft to knock down any potential pick because it's not a great class, and there are legitimate arguments against Will Campbell. There are legitimate arguments against Ted McMillan. There are legitimate arguments against Kelvin Banks. There are legitimate arguments against Travis Hunter, against Abdul Carter, against Mason Graham. I'm missing one. Who am I missing?
Will Johnson.
Will Johnson, any of them. I think it was somebody else. But there's legitimate arguments against all these guys. And this was a couple months ago. We were texting as you were kind of getting familiar with the top of the class. And, you're talking about Will Carter's arms and Kelvin Banks' power and Ted McMillan's speed, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I think I said to you, they have to take somebody.
I know.
You can't just say, no, thanks. We'll we'll pick 4th overall next year instead.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Right? All right, so you want to just trade the pick for a future like
No.
I don't want to hear
I'm more joking,
the idea that, well, this is where these guys would have ranked this year. Well, look at them in next year's class. You didn't have the 4th overall pick last year. You don't have the 4th. Maybe you will, but for now, you don't have the 4th overall pick next year. You have the 4th overall pick in this draft. To say, oh, well, none of these guys are worth a 4th overall pick in 2024 or in 2021 or in 2026 or in 2026, that's not the draft they're in.
This always gets them so fired
because
up.
it's annoying. It's such a lazy take.
So here's my not even rebuttal, but here's my response to that, because I have done that.
You can only take the players that are on the board.
So if I can only take the players on the board, because I can, that's the only option. I'm hitting it down the fairway.
Right.
That's what I'm doing. And my point about bringing up Will Campbell and that he's going to be good in no matter where he plays is that I don't see a bust. Like, I don't see a bust factor with him where they're going to be put in a situation where in an admittedly down year of a draft, especially at the top, in a year where there isn't those types of blue chip talents, the safest thing to do is to just take the guy that's hitting it right down the fairway. Right. So I look at Will Campbell, and I think he's going to be able to hit it down the fairway no matter where you end up playing him on the offensive line. I don't think you can say the same thing about some of the other guys that we've tossed around at number 4, Carter and Hunter aside. But they even have their questions. Yeah, I don't have many questions about those two. But those two aside, Mason Graham.
Yeah,
I know he's kind of getting a lot of buzz right now on Pat's Twitter, like he's the popular guy right now. My biggest concern with Mason Graham, concerns, I have 2. One is I'm not as high on Mason Graham as a run player as everybody else is. I think he makes plays against the run and he flashes against the run. But if you're going to ask him to consistently hold the point of attack, take on double teams, and play a 3-down role, I don't necessarily watch him do that consistently with his pad level and with his ability to anchor in the trenches. So I don't know if he's an all-purpose player. Like, I don't know if he's an every-down player. Now, maybe in their defense that they're going to go to, if Vrabel, that's going to be more 4-down and be more aggressive. He will be. But the comparison that I keep making with him, is it Fisk or Fisky? This is going to drive me up a freaking wall.
I haven't.
But Braden Fisk, I'm going to say Fisk because Deuce and Paul made fun of me yesterday, Marine, and said that I say it wrong. So I'm going to say Braden Fisk with the Los Angeles Rams, who came in this year with the Rams and was one of the most prolific, efficient interior pass rushers in the NFL as a rookie. Just excellent rushing the passer as a rookie. But he's not a run player, at least not yet. Like, he's not consistently good against the run. Same thing with Christian Barmore. Like, it took him a few years to develop as a run player as well. Mason Graham, that element of it worries me a little bit. The second element that worries me a little bit with Mason Graham is more big picture, and I think we're in agreement on this. The value add of adding another interior pass rusher who is more disruptor than he is production artist.
So I'll
He's
just
not,
say this.
like, who's getting the quarterback on the ground? The interior pressure, I get it. It hurt Brady. We hear it all the time. Pressure at guys' feet, pressure up the middle, all those types of things. I'm not saying it has no value, But if you're building your team and you're building your defense around 2 interior pass rushers in Christian Barmore and Mason Graham, if you go out in free agency, you absolutely now need to find the finisher. You need to find the Matthew Judon, the guy
Right.
that's actually going to have the double-digit sack season. Maybe that's Josh Sweat. Like, I don't know. Like, maybe that guy exists. But if Mason Graham is your plan at 4, and this is why everything connects from free agency to the draft, if that's your plan, is that you're going to build with 2 inside guys that are going to push the middle of the pocket, and that's how you're going to build out this defensive front, then you have to have somebody on the edge that's going to finish the play. And so that means going out in free agency and finding that guy through free agency.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on all that. But again, just to get back to the point, like, we can nitpick all these guys, and we're going to do it. That's what we do. But they got to take somebody. They can't, unless you want them to trade down so far that they add a future first, like a valuable future first, something like that, which they need talent now. They can't do another year.
I'm okay with them doing that.
Moving down to like 15, 16.
Yeah, I'm okay with them doing that.
You need players. You need to start building this thing up. And in this draft,
but how's that? Like, you are building this thing up. Like, is
because
there a
they
huge
need
drop-off?
to turn it around now. They can't
but
do.
Why? Like, what's the rush? Like, is there a huge drop off between in this draft who you're going to get at 4 and who you're going to get at 12?
If it's Abdul Carter or it's Will Campbell, yes, there absolutely is.
Sure, like, I'm not making that trade ahead of the draft because I want to see how the board shakes out.
What's the difference between Campbell and Ursery?
But you're not talking about Ursery at 12. If you're going down to 12, you're still in range for a Calvin Banks. You're still in range.
You think Calvin Banks? I don't think Calvin Banks gets out of top 10.
I think you will. I've kind of gotten. When I was down at the Senior Bowl, I talked to some people down there that know way more about offensive line play than me, and I think that we and the outside might be a little bit higher on Calvin Banks.
I just think, look, they need impact players. Yep. Are those players who are going to get at 12 good prospects? Yes. Are they impact players? No. Not in this draft.
Depending on the way the board falls, like, is that guy at 4 going to be an impact player?
I think Campbell can be, yes.
Okay,
Carter obviously can be. Hunter can be. It's not – you got to take somebody. You have to take somebody, and they can't do another year of half-assing the roster.
Yeah, you keep saying that. I'm not saying don't take anybody. I'm just saying that I'm not in a huge rush.
Okay, but to your point, if it's not a quarterback, if it's a quarterback, that's different. If there's a team down there that wants a quarterback and is going to give you multiple future firsts, fine. Is a team going to give you the package you would want to move down outside of the top 10?
I don't know. And that's a fair question.
In this draft, right? You're not going to get it. So you can't, the Coley Mick tweet that I love. You can't tell Roger Goodell you're drafting Jeremiah Smith 4th overall and tell him to meet you in the parking lot, right? You got to take somebody in this draft, and this is a team that needs impact players, and there's not that many of them in this class.
I just wonder, one, I'm not in any huge rush, and I understand that we're all starving to see a good product.
They need to be a little urgent.
Why? Like, they just hired Mike Vrabel. Drake May's in year 2. Like,
they've made the playoffs once in the last 5 years. They haven't won a playoff game since February 2019.
Sure,
they need to get this thing
Rome
going.
wasn't built in a day. You're not going to all.
I know it was, and I'm not saying they need to contend for a Super Bowl this year, but they need to win more than 4 games.
Of course, they need to win more than 4 games, but I think they're going to win more than 4 games just because Vrabel's a much better coach than Gerard Mayo. Like, I think they're going to get there organically.
The roster needs significant improvements.
If they want to be frisky, then the roster needs significant improvements. They just want to win more than 4 games.
I think they need to be closer to that frisky category.
Sure, I hear that, but they're not firing Vrabel after 1 year.
I know they're not. So, I know, but that shouldn't mean complacency.
I'm not saying complacency. I look at this draft, and it's not a strong draft at the top. I don't know what the big drop off is there necessarily. If Hunter and Abdul Carter are off the board in the first 3 picks, like, is there a huge drop off from 4 to 12, from 4 to 8, from 4 to 10? Like, I'm not advocating for them to go down to 25.
Are you going to get the pick that justifies it? Are you going to get the return that justifies it for a team that needs premium positions? In the reality, like, you're in a position right now to draft a left tackle who is a premium prospect at that position, right?
Yep.
And like you said, they're going to win more games this year. Just Mike Vrabel's better. It sounds like they're going to make some moves in free agency, things like that. You punt on that position again, You're not going to be at the top of the draft to draft
But what
a
if
left
you're
tackle
not?
next
Why
year.
are you automatically punting on that position again?
Who else are you getting? Like, there's not.
You can go into free agency and
Ronnie Stanley's going back to
you can
Baltimore.
sign like an Alaric Jackson, who's a solid NFL left tackle. Is he a stud? Is he going to come in here and be a top 5 left tackle in the league? No, but he's going to be a serviceable NFL left tackle. And I just
then they have to get that guy.
Sure.
You.
I'm not saying bring Vidarian Lowe back.
There's
and put him out there
there's
left
going to be
tackle.
one, maybe 2 left tackles in free agency, right? It's going to be Jackson and Robinson.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, you can't whiff on those guys then.
Yeah.
If that's, and I guess the order is backwards because free agency's first, but like, you can't leave that position unaddressed. And by unaddressed, I mean like, not, all right, here's 3 guys who are all fringe starters, and one of them's moving over from right tackle, and one of them's really a guard, and maybe no
one's saying that.
Top contract, top pick.
Why can't they go out and sign Alaric Jackson if they don't love any of these tackles?
All right, they
in this
also
draft or any of the options at 4. Like, I don't understand why you're so anti trading down. Like, I think this is a team that needs as many bites at the apple.
I'm not anti trading down. I'm not, and I've said that. Like, they need more than one good player. I think moving so far down in a weaker draft, like, you still need, you have to get the return that makes that worth it.
Sure, but I think the rebuttal to that is that
I can't believe I talked myself into being the anti-trade down guy.
Well, the real thing in your point of what is a team trading up for is a fair point.
Right.
Okay, but let's just operate in a world where, let's say, it goes Carter, Hunter,
yeah,
and then the quarterbacks start.
Right.
And so a team is sitting there at 4. The Vegas Raiders are sitting there at 4, looking at the Patriots on the clock at 4, and they want to make sure that they get Shedeur Sanders.
All right,
they
moving
get
down
Cam
to
Ward.
6, I'm fine with.
Okay, or let's push it back just a little bit, just for the argument's sake, right? Like, let's say
the Saints at 9.
Saints at 9. The Saints at 9 call up and say, we've got, it's gone far enough. We're not taking any more risks, because I do think there's a really good chance that Cam Ward picks up a lot of steam. Now, could it end up being 2022 all over again, where Malik Willis is looked at as a top 5 pick until a day before the draft? Like, that's absolutely possible, but there's a lot of love right now for Cam Ward being a top 5 pick in this draft. So if you do you're probably not going to get like the RG3 trade.
Right.
It's going to be a discounted version of that. But if you get that kind of trade package and you go from 4 to 9 in a draft that I believe is deeper than it is top heavy. And I don't think it's a great draft in general.
Yeah.
But if there's a strength of the draft, it's in the depth. Like, it's in the fact that there is a decent run of players, I would say, from like 15 to 60 or so, that are all kind of comparable and all pretty good in certain ways. I would just much rather do that and try to get a pick next year and have all this ammo to move around, or to trade one of the picks for a player or something like that.
So I guess what pick? Like, are you getting the Saints' future first? Then I'm in.
Yeah.
If it's the future second,
if you're trading down in there, it's a quarterback pick. You're trading a quarterback pick.
Yeah.
Then you're expecting to get a future.
So
first.
I would say so. If it's like, if it's all right, we're going to give you 9 this year second and future second. No, that's not worth the drop. I think the idea that, and then at 9, people are going to have the same complaint. This was more my point, right? Yeah. It wasn't, because I'm not against trading down. I'm not. Let me be clear. I'm not. I'm not. Let me be clear. I'm not. But you can't trade down and then complain they got the lesser player. Like, it was more, you have to pick. I kind of threw that comment in and I didn't think it out right. There are people who are just not going to be happy. You did. Yeah. There are people who are not going to be happy with whoever they take in the first round because bad draft, right?
Yeah.
I was more so saying, like, you can't just say, no, we're not going to pick this year. Just bookmark us for the fourth overall pick, and we'll make it next year when the draft's better.
Why are you defaulting to that? Nobody is saying that they're not going to make a pick.
I know they're not saying that, but I feel like that's like deep down people are in this pretzel of they don't like any of the players, so they're just not going to be happy with whoever they take, and they're just going to call it a bad pick, whoever they take, because they're going to say he's not a prospect worthy of the 4th overall pick. Is the guy you take at 9 going to be worthy? And I think this is a dumb thing to do because everybody's in different drafts, but to use your kind of benchmarks, is the guy you take at 10 going to be worthy, or the guy you take at 9 going to be worthy of the 9th pick in this generic NFL draft that people like to talk about?
No, not necessarily, but I feel more comfortable taking a lot of these guys at 9.
Is there something to be said, well, if I'm not going to get the guy who's worth the value of the pick, I'd rather pick lower and get future assets? That's where I'm like, okay, fine. If that's what you want to do, trade down. But to say, well, you can't take Will Campbell at 4 because he wouldn't have gone 4th overall last year. Or you can't take Kelvin Banks at 9 because he wouldn't have gone 9th last year. That's a fallacy.
It's an either or, right? Like, would you rather take Ted McMillan at 9, but then you have a future first-round pick, another midday pick, and if
you want to, and this is where I framed it poorly.
Yeah.
That either or is fine, and we're going to spend a lot of time on that on the next 4 months.
Yes.
If you're just going to tell me individual prospects the Patriots shouldn't take them in the first round because they're not actually slated for that spot in this generic universal draft, well, then you're not going to be able to. Then all right, let the clock run out like the Vikings did, and just wait. I guess just wait until you're comfortable.
I would feel a lot more comfortable, but a lot of these players taking them a little bit later.
That's fine.
Like I feel like people think that I don't like Ted McMillan as a prospect. I don't hate Ted McMillan as a prospect. I just don't think that I don't like taking him at 4. So if I took him at 9, I'd feel a lot better about it because I'm taking him and I'm getting the package from what I traded down.
So honestly, my ideal world is assuming Hunter and my ideal world is they get Carter, but assuming Hunter and Carter go in top 4, right?
Yeah.
You move to 6, you get Campbell at 6, and you get
it'd be a smaller package.
It's a smaller package. The one I looked at, and I love to do this. I go back and look at the past trades and try to find what the equivalent would be. There isn't a great one in recent memory. The closest is the 2018 trade when the Jets moved from 5 to 3 to get Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
And if we were there now, the Jets had 2 second-round picks that year, which the Raiders don't have. So you have to kind of get creative, but you also have to consider the level of prospect that Darnold was versus Sanders and that there were other quarterbacks on the board. The closest equivalent to me, you go from 4 to 6. You get 38, and you get the Raiders' future second. So you don't get the future first in this one. You're only moving down 2 spots. But the beauty of that trade is you now have 37 and 38. You now have 2 seconds and 2 thirds. I'm going to package one of the seconds, 37 or 38. I'm going to package that with one of the thirds, and I'm going to move up into the 20s. Sure. And that's the ideal scenario for me. Now, can you still get Campbell at 6? That would really put the bow on it. If not, now it becomes another conversation. Maybe you trade down again. So I'm not anti-trading down, but just understand, they're going to take somebody in the first round.
You said you didn't want
probably going to be slotted over where the ranking is.
We had to take somebody at 4. And
you don't have to take somebody at 4, but you have to take somebody in the point I was making, you don't trade, like, let's say somebody came to you. I guess here's the hypothetical that these people might like. And this is, we're getting nuts here. Let's say, and I hate when I do that.
I got him in such a pretzel.
Well, no, because I say these people, and then people on Twitter think I'm talking about them.
You people.
Let's say all right, the Saints at 9 is a perfect example. Or no, who's a quarterback team that's even lower? The Steelers. Where's Steelers picking? Like 18, 19, something like that, right?
Oh God, now we're moving down.
Well, no, hang on. Let's say the Steelers come to you and say, we want to hold on to our first round pick, but we want 4. We're going to give you our first round pick in the next 3 drafts. Would you do that? You don't get a first round pick this year. You're picking at 38, but you get the Steelers' next 3 first round picks.
Yes.
So that might be that's kind of the thing I'm talking about.
The way I look at it, and then we can move on because we've gotten bogged
honestly,
down.
now that I think about it, I might do that too. But
the way I look at it is that to go back to your analogy of this generic NFL draft that we always talk about, I feel like this draft, in a lot of ways, is like starting at, in a good year like last year, we're really starting at like 4 or 5 with the best players, right? Like Abdul Carter would have been after the quarterbacks last year. He's probably like somewhere in that 4 to 6 range of that draft in the competition with like a Joe Alt and the Malik Neighbors and all those guys. So if you trade down into that 5 to 10 range, you are now taking a player in that range that probably belongs somewhere in that range because you're cutting off the top of the draft,
but
right?
Are they going to go, like, who's going ahead of them if there's nobody worth going ahead of them?
Well, you're going to lose out probably on Campbell. Like I'm not losing any sleep over losing out on Mason Graham. So maybe that's just a me thing.
I'm not either.
Right? So I'm not losing any sleep over that. So I guess that's where I'm at with that sort of Saints pick at 9 being where I would like to be at, because I think a lot of the times once you get to 9, 10, 11, 12, you are talking about prospects that are not perfect, right? No prospect's perfect, but
Right.
you know what I'm getting at. So I just like the idea of that a lot. I like the idea of trying to trade down in this draft to put yourself in a position where I can talk myself into Ted McMillan at 9 plus all the picks that you got in the trade down.
Right.
I can talk myself into, Will Johnson. I can talk myself into a lot of guys at 9 in this draft that feel comfortable taking them there. Plus you get the package from trading down, Tyler Warren. Like, is he available still at 9? I would be down with that. I just watched him the other day. I thought he was terrific. Like, I'd be down with that, but I'm not taking Tyler Warren at 4.
Sure.
But I might take Tyler Warren at 9.
If you get the correct package, I could be into that. I
All right.
don't know if you're going to get the package. We got to take some calls. There's people on YouTube that want to call in that the lines are full.
Oh, okay.
So
confidence.
they're mad at
It's
me.
important to have. Oh, see, I messed it up. I'm going to start over. Confidence, it's important to have when you're on the road with Bridgestone tires on your car, truck, SUV, or minivan. You're riding on your tires you can trust. Bridgestone tires are engineered to give you peace of mind so you can focus on enjoying the journey. So whether you're on your morning commute, a cross-country road trip, or a relaxing Sunday drive, Bridgestone tires will be with you wherever life's roads may lead. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey, available now at Sullivan Tire. And are you getting ready for the big game? Create your own winning watch party with fan favorite finds from Bob's Discount Furniture. Bob's got everything from reclining sofas with charging ports so your phone never dies when you're checking stats, bar carts perfect for celebratory drinks, stylish servers for all your halftime snacks, and must-have media centers so you'll never miss a play. So stop in on or visit mybobs.com to score major style points with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. All right, let's get to these calls.
Yep.
Mike is in San Diego. What's up, Mike? Mike, you still there? Mike. All right, Mike, call back in. Sorry for keeping you on hold for so long. Jesse is in Virginia. What's up, Jesse?
Hey guys,
Hey.
little long one here, but just two thoughts that I'd like your opinion on, or at least I think it's worth discussing. So, first, this idea that we stick at 4 and take Travis Hunter, okay, I'll play with it for a minute. If your plan is to put him at cornerback, and because you guys get in the weeds, I think you can appreciate this. Look down the road. If you select someone at 4, you're planning on giving them a second contract. Are we really going to put 2 cornerbacks on with massive deals in the second contract when you already have Christian Gonzalez? I just don't think it's realistic, and a lot of people are saying he has a higher ceiling at corner. I just don't know why the Patriots would draft him and put him at corner when you already have Christian Gonzalez. If you're going to take him, you better well make him a wide receiver. And 2, I like this theory of hitting it down the fairway, finding starters in a draft that is deeper than stacked with high-level talent. Let me ask you this question. In the scenario of trading back with the Raiders, would you trade back up and take a Gray Zabel if I told you he was Patriot-level Joe Thuney, where you just solved the problem on the left side of the line with Will Campbell, who is a good Matt Light comp, and Gray Zabel, who is a good Joe Thuney comp? Question. What do you guys think?
Thanks, Jesse. Thanks for the call. Yeah, I mean, that's a great start.
Yeah.
On your left side of your offensive line.
You have to really nail some things in free agency. You got to get a pass rusher. You got to get a receiver in the veteran market. But if they were to land those 2, and I think offensive line's the hardest to add, and then you move down to 6, and then maybe it's the trade I just talked about, 37, 38, 69, 77, package 2 of those, move up, you take Zabel. I'd be in for that. He also makes an interesting point there about Hunter, and that are you going to have 2 corners on big contracts, and maybe the Patriots and one of these teams have used him as a receiver.
Yeah,
for that reason.
Yeah, I've been pretty consistent with Travis Hunter being a receiver. I would play him at receiver. To me, it's just a value thing. It's a value add thing. I think he's more significant. He's going to move the needle more for you being a great receiver than he's going to be a great corner. And I think his receiver tape is really good. I think it's definitely good enough for him to play that position in the NFL. So I'd look at it into the caller's point, not necessarily worried about Christian Gonzalez and all how the contract side of it. But just like where you're allocating your resources,
Sure.
you know, and I look at wide receiver as a much bigger need for this team than corner. I look at Travis Hunter as a pretty good wide receiver prospect. I wouldn't necessarily, I hate throwing around the word elite. Like, I think elite is thrown around a little bit too easily these days. But a high-end wide receiver prospect,
Yeah.
let's put it that way. And I'm willing to play him there. And if he wants to play both ways, it's harder in that way, I would say, to play him. You know, maybe you play him third downs on defense. I don't know.
2-minute drill corner kind of thing.
It's harder. I think it's harder than having him play full-time corner and moonlight on offense, kind of like Marcus Jones does.
Yeah.
I think it's harder to do it the other way. But if I was Travis Hunter, and I've said this before, I would want to play receiver because it maximizes my value in terms of gaining the most money in the league.
I don't know that it does that.
I think it does.
Well, so in short term, yeah, but just with his build and, you know, the durability issues he had in college, what's worth more? Call it 2 wide receiver contracts or 3 cornerback contracts?
2 wide receiver contracts.
He's going to be in the league longer as a corner.
He's going to be, if he gets paid twice at wide receiver, we're talking upwards of $150 million.
You don't think he can get that? Corners are getting, what's the
You're
top
getting-
cornerback contract?
16, 18, somewhere around
Is
there.
that it? There's no $20 million corners? Are you sure?
That might be the very top of the market, but
I thought corners were getting more.
You're not going to get 5 for 20. Like, you're not going to get $100 million contract playing corner. Like, maybe Patrick Surtain will, but like, you'd have to be that good.
Well, maybe I think he's that good. Maybe I think he can be the
Maybe
best
you
corner
do.
in the league.
All right, let's take.
Jalen Ramsey and Surtain are 24 AV. All right, I thought it was a little higher than that.
All right, Rob is in Virginia. What's up, Rob?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hey, sorry to keep going on with this Travis Hunter talk, but I've had this thought for a long time, and I was thinking if we're gonna play him, if he's allowed to play both ways, why not play him as like a deep safety? I feel like you'd maximize his value more. He's further away from the ball. You can play longer in the NFL. You know, safeties play longer traditionally than corners do. Again, if we're just talking about if he's going to play both ways, but I haven't heard anyone ever bring that up, and I don't understand why. I mean, corner, obviously, you know, you have a more direct impact on the game, but, I mean, again, if we're talking about him playing both ways, I just feel like the way to maximize both ways, him on defense and offense, is to put him as like a deep safety. So what do you guys think about that?
That's a good question, Rob. I think you hit it, though, in your own response of value to the team. Having a guy that shuts down his side of the field or goes man-to-man all game long like Christian Gonzalez does is just a lot more valuable. Unfortunately, unless you're Ed Reed,
Right.
like playing up top at safety, 75% of the game you're not making an impact. And I understand you are in conceptually, in theory, as a help defender and all that good stuff, but you're not around the ball for a lot
look,
of the game.
One of Hunter's best traits is his ball skills, his ability
Yeah.
to win at the catch point, and that's
And
just
his closing speed.
you're not utilizing that at safety nearly as much as you are at corner.
Yeah. It's not a bad point though in terms of like durability and all that, but I don't think there's a ton of fear in my mind in terms of attrition at corner. You know, I think it's the attrition part of it for Travis Hunter comes more in at receiver. You know, when he goes over the middle, when he takes the big hits as a ball carrier after the catch. Like, is he going to have the durability to do that, and then also play a little bit on defense? Like, that's asking a lot.
Right.
All right, Don is in Philadelphia. What's up, Don?
Hey guys,
Hey.
third-time caller, long-time listener here.
Love it.
Quick question for you guys. What is your ideal off-season in terms of specific players, in terms of draft and free agency? You know, in draft, including first-round pick, second-round pick, you could trade back up, you could trade your second-round pick, and then ideally, who are you guys wanting to sign in free agency? Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call, Don. That is a lot to unpack on a radio show, but I'll just throw out a couple of names in free agency. I mentioned Alaric Jackson already.
Yep.
Alaric Jackson, to me, is a target regardless of what their approach to the draft is, because I think they need 2 new starting tackles, And even if he ends up playing on the right side, I think he can start on either side of the line for you. And so he's a starter somewhere on the offensive line. I would look at signing him. I would definitely make a run at T. Higgins. I think you have to. I don't think you can be picky there. You have no choice in my mind.
Well, what about some of the trade guys?
Like a DK Metcalf or something?
Metcalf, if whatever happened. A.J. Brown's name's been thrown out there. I don't see why he's requesting a trade, but that's been a rumor.
I would skew more towards T. Higgins because I don't love giving up the capital. Like, I don't love having to give up significant draft capital in the spot that they're in right now.
So what if
it's a great, and I like DK, you know that, if we're talking about it being like a Jamar Chase, then obviously, I'm opening the door.
What if it's the Brandon Ayuk trade? So a second, a fourth, and call it a future pick.
I think I'd rather have T. Higgins.
Oh, I'd rather have Metcalf. And then you do, like I said, you do that trade with the Raiders. You move down from 4 to 6. They have 38? So you get 37 from the Raiders. So now you've replaced that. You've basically traded DK Metcalf. You've moved down 2 spots in the first round to get DK Metcalf. You replace that pick in that trade. I would, yes. I mean, second and fourth, I would.
But now it's a lot of moving parts. Like I don't know if they could actually pull something like that off. I guess maybe if you did all of those things, then sure. But I'd rather.
You know what? Even without that, you're gonna get a player better than DK Metcalf, 38.
I would just rather pay T. Higgins. Like, you're not.
But Metcalf's a much better. I think Metcalf's a significantly better receiver.
I don't think he's as much better as you do.
I think he is.
I don't think he is. I think they're both good.
He's been playing opposite Jamar Chase's whole career.
And he has been playing. Tyler Lockett and JSN aren't scrubs. Like
they're not Jamar Chase.
No, but they're good.
And he
players.
just got with JSN. He also doesn't have the injury history Higgins
before
does.
That. I think Higgins' injuries are overblown. I think Higgins this past year didn't have any long-term security on his contract.
I'll give you this here. I agree with you on that, but I how I feel about this. I thought Metcalf over Higgins for a while, and I'd give up the draft assets.
Yeah, but I think Metcalf in a vacuum is probably a better player than T. Higgins. Yeah. But I don't think it's so much better that I want to give up all the draft picks to take Metcalf.
All the draft picks. I'll give up 38 and 104, 105. I'll do that.
I'm not sure Seattle will do that. I don't know what's in it for Seattle.
I don't know. If it's
I still
more,
don't
it's
understand
more.
why they're trading DK Metcalf. I still don't get it.
Because he needs a new contract, and they're a rebuilding-ish team. And
are they? Like, why are they?
They don't have a quarterback.
Why are they interested in trading one of their best players on their team? I just don't know.
This is what it is now. You want a new contract, you request a trade.
Right, but we haven't gotten to that point yet where he's, like, disgruntled. Like, we're not at the Myles Garrett point.
If I told you 2 weeks before Tyreek Hill got traded that he was getting traded, you would have called me nuts. That happened like that.
I wouldn't say
it's
that.
The whole pre-agent
I disagree.
thing.
I think Tyreek Hill's situation was different.
It's the whole pre-agent thing.
But I think Tyreek Hill's situation was different.
But we've seen it across the league with all of these guys. When a receiver is entering the final year in his contract, the teams always start taking offers, and the idea is you make him an offer good enough that they make the deal.
Okay, I look at DK Metcalf and T. Higgins in a similar tier. I think DK Metcalf might be higher in that tier, but I don't think that they're like. I don't think we are comparing like Jamar Chase to T. Higgins, right? I think we're comparing more comparable players in that. And if it's just Mr. Kraft's money, then we're just cutting checks here. I just rather do that.
All right, we feel different, I think, about Higgins then, but
yeah,
I'd go for the better player.
All right, Will is in New Jersey. What's up, Will?
Hey guys, how are you?
Hey,
good.
Hey, I just had a question while you guys are talking about receivers. What do you guys think of Trey Harris from Ole Miss? I saw that he compared to Higgins from Iowa State. Obviously, Ole Miss had a wonky offensive system for a decent amount of games, but I thought he might be like a good day 2, day 3 prospect for him. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, we got an email about Trey Harris too, where the email is just Trey Harris.
Okay,
that's the whole email. And
is there a question mark or just
nope? It just literally says. Here, let me find it. It just says that's the entire email. Trey Harris. That's it.
Okay.
So a lot of Trey Harris talk here today. I haven't done a complete review of Trey Harris yet. I have seen a little bit of him. The one thing that I did like about his game is that he does separate at the top of the route a little bit better than I was expecting.
Yeah.
He's got some build-up speed. He's not a burner per se, I would say, but he's got some build-up speed, but his hands are really inconsistent. His ball tracking is really inconsistent. He had a really, really bad drop in the game against LSU that I watched of his. So I'm not anti-Trey Harris on day 2. I think that's the perfect time for him.
Yep.
If he's the 38th overall pick by the Patriots, I'm not going to be, angry. Like, I'm not going to be pissed at them for that. But that's where it starts for me with Trey Harris.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the development thing after that, right? Are they going to be able to develop him? Who's the wide receivers coach? You're going to hear a lot of people point out that the last time Mike Vrabel took one of these big physical outside receivers from Ole Miss, it went pretty well for him. And
I think they're very different players.
I think so too, but you're going to hear a lot of people talk about that. I'm worried about the development as a whole, just any receiver 38. I kind of already said that, but Trey Harris does intrigue me.
Yeah, I think those two guys are very different players. I don't see Trey Harris as the yak monster that AJ Brown is. Like, I think that Trey Harris is more. He's going to get his yards on air yards. He's not going to get his yards on
AJ Brown viewed as that guy coming out?
Yeah, AJ Brown.
I can never remember what AJ Brown's pre-draft, because it was everybody was in on Metcalf. AJ Brown was the other guy.
So AJ Brown was always considered like a running back playing wide receiver.
Okay.
Always very good in that way. I think a lot of the draft conversations with him were actually against like N'Keal Harry and Deebo Samuel, because those guys were pretty similar in terms of their skill sets. Obviously, it did not go the Patriots' way.
No.
But yeah, that was one of them. Just really quickly, and I know we got a lot of calls, and I'm going to get to all of them. On this, an email, Jake emailed in here a very long-winded email, claiming that yesterday on Unfiltered, I said that I would take Will Campbell over Travis Hunter if Will Campbell checks out as a tackle. I don't remember saying that. It
doesn't sound like you.
If I did say that, then I misspoke
Sounds
or
more
something
like me.
that. So I'm not going to read your whole email, Jake, which is very thorough. I appreciate that, because I'm just going to say that was not the take. But I would take Will Campbell at 4 if his arms check out.
Yeah.
But no, I have Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter in a tier of their own in this draft. Let's see. Let's get to some of these emails, because we got emails and we got calls. So there's a lot going on here. Where's the other one that I wanted to bring up? Oh man. All right. So this person emailed in about Todd Downing. He said probably my least favorite hire of this is Todd Downing, and how hard this system is to coach wide receivers. We went over that a little bit earlier on in the show. I think we're both in agreement. We're not saying that I think it's going to be an absolutely terrible hire necessarily, but if we had to pick, I had to pick, I would say that was my least favorite hire of this class. All right, we've heard a lot of this as well. I'm sure you have as well, about trading Joe Milton and what the Patriots could potentially get for Joe Milton. Where do you stand on that? Do you see them shopping Joe Milton? What's your temperature on that?
So I wouldn't be in a rush to do it. Look, there's teams that want quarterbacks, and they have their rankings, and Sam Darnold's going to be out there, we think, and Kirk Cousins might get traded from Atlanta, and you got the guys in the draft and all that, and slowly, but there's going to be more teams, I think, that want quarterbacks than quarterbacks available. So teams are going to have to go further down that list. So I wouldn't trade Joe Milton right away. I'd let the market kind of set itself. If somebody were to offer a top 100 pick for Joe Milton, which might sound outlandish, but given the lack of quarterbacks available this offseason, I don't think is impossible. If somebody's going to give you like a third-round pick for Joe Milton, I'd probably do that. Anything less, I think I'd wait another year, unless there's maybe like a package where somebody's going to give you a bunch of picks, because they're going to need a backup quarterback. Like, that's still a spot you need. And if you trade Joe Milton for, a fifth-round pick, you're probably just going to end up turning around and using that pick on a backup quarterback. And I don't know that that's worth it at that point. I'd hold on to Milton, develop him for another year, and maybe he gets another showcase game or just has a really good preseason. And now maybe trading him for a top 100 pick becomes more realistic. So I'd continue to let, that investment pay out, and I'd let Milton grow, because they're going to need, it's not like, if Jacoby was coming back, it would be another story, but what are you using on what are you going to use on a backup quarterback? If it's just a pick you're getting for Joe Milton, that doesn't seem worth it to me. I'd let the guy continue to grow internally and have what we think is a good backup for Drake May. So I'm not against it, but against them doing it, and I think they should take calls and consider it and all of that. But I want to see Joe Milton go somewhere where he's going to have a chance to really start. But I wouldn't be in a rush to move him either. If a team's going to get desperate, sure. I think if you let this play out another year or two and Joe Milton balls out in preseason, I do think you can get a top 100 pick for him eventually. I think that's a possibility. I don't think it's a guarantee, but I think it's a possibility. I would take my time and wait and see.
I'm not trading Joe Milton unless I get absolutely blown away by an offer. I think it's extremely valuable to have two quarterbacks that you think can play.
So would you trade him for a third?
That one I'd have to think about. That's a good question.
So you're maybe even a little more hesitant than I am. If somebody's going to give me like the 80th pick in the draft, I'd probably do that.
So I want to table this with saying that I don't think that anybody's going to give you the 80th overall pick.
I don't think so either.
For Joe Milton.
I don't think so either.
So I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves.
Well, but you said blown away.
I would have to get blown away. Yeah.
So is that blown away?
It's right on. That's like that.
That's right there.
That's the over under. You know,
Okay.
like that's like right there for me.
Let me pull up the draft order and we'll see you.
I got to be honest, and you know that I've sort of come over to this side of the street. I'm not a big draft picks guy. Like I'm not as enamored as I used to be, because we go into in depth in the draft as much as anyone. I've seen the Patriots how many times are they? So we're going to take the 80th overall pick and he's going to turn into Chase Winovich. Like I'd rather have Joe Milton.
Right.
We're going to take the 80th overall pick and he's going to be Caden Wallace. I'd rather have Joe Milton.
I think you can. And now we're getting into kind of the NBA philosophy of it. You can package the picks. Let's see here.
Sure.
So top of the 4th round, Cleveland, Tennessee, New York. They're going to have a chance to get quarterbacks though, so they don't. Let's see.
He's still an early day 3 pick.
The Saints at 93.
Like.
Saints call offer 93 for Joe Milton.
No, I'm keeping Joe Milton.
The Jets at 92. No,
Definitely
I also wouldn't trade him.
No.
Who else needs a quarterback here? The Steelers at 83. Send him to Pittsburgh.
No, I'm keeping him.
All right.
I think it needs to be. I think blown away.
All right.
Is second or higher.
The Raiders at 73. The Raiders at 68. How about the Raiders of 68?
No.
No. Well, you're stauncher than me. I want to find where your line is. Hang on.
Yeah.
No, Panthers need a quarterback. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Steelers at 52 would be the next quarterback pick.
That's I think where I'm at.
So there you go.
There's so much value.
I agree with you.
There's so much value in having a cost-controlled backup that you think has upside. Like I think that is the ideal backup quarterback. Rookie contract with upside.
Yeah.
We're not talking about Chase Daniel, right? We're talking about a guy that has a ceiling. And I think there's a ton of value in that. And as much as I love Drake May, we love Drake May, I'm not crowning Drake May yet.
Right.
So
and the other thing is Joe Milton's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. If he was entering the final year of his contract.
When we get to like the Jimmy G, Jacoby Brissett situation 3 years from now, then we'll talk about
if Joe Milton is entering the final year of his contract, it'd be a very different conversation. Yep. Matt Castle, they held on to Matt Castle all the way through.
Yep.
Right? I think he had 1 or 2 years left on his deal at that point. That was before the preset rookie contracts. But no, I'm with you. I think you'd have to be blown away more than me, but I have to be blown away to trade Joe Milton. I'd take the calls. I would take the calls, and I might make calls.
Sure.
But I'm not just giving them away.
But to your point, then how are you addressing backup quarterback? And wouldn't you, at the end of the day, then have to just use another draft pick on a backup quarterback?
But if I'm getting a 3rd round draft pick and I can draft my backup in the 5th, okay, so I moved up 2 rounds like that. You move up 70 spots. Now I'm in. If I'm trading Joe Milton for a 4th and I'm getting a 5th back, and then I'm taking the backup with the 5th. All right, I moved up maybe 35 spots if it's the full round. Like that's it on day 3. That's completely different.
Yeah, I hear you.
So there is a point where it's like, oh, I have to replace my backup quarterback. Fine, I'll do it for the pick you're giving me.
Yes. Yeah.
Or maybe it's, what if you get so maybe this is the way you do it. I get a 3rd and a 5th. So now I get the 5th to replace my backup quarterback, and now I have the 3rd.
I never give away quarterbacks that have upside. If I'm a team, if I'm the GM, I'm not doing that.
I'm with you.
All right. Steve here emails in and says that he's a little bit concerned with all of the different philosophies and coaching trees on the offensive side of the ball. We touched on this briefly a little bit, and his concern, which I think is valid, is that he's worried about wires getting crossed and mixed signals and things like that with all the different languages and things like that. So to that, Steve, I think that's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Thomas Brown, West Coast guy. Doug Marrone, I would say. Sean Payton, Bill O'Brien.
He's also just been in the league long enough that
that's
seen everything.
He's had a lot of overlap with this kind of offense. But Thomas Brown is the pass game coordinator, is a West Coast guy. Ashton Grant, right? The reported quarterbacks coach is coming from Cleveland. He's a West Coast guy. I get all that. The buck stops with McDaniels and Mike Vrabel. This is on those two guys, especially Vrabel, to say this is the playbook, this is the language, this is what we're speaking. You guys have to adjust. It's not on McDaniels to adjust. It's on Ashton Grant, and it's on Doug Marrone, and it's on Todd Downing, and it's on Thomas Brown. And we'll see how that works out. But it's on those guys to do that. Then we also got an email from Henry here with a couple of names that he wants to throw out there. And one of them, we've talked a lot about Mason Graham today. Josh Simmons, we've talked a lot about. But one guy that he does mention here, too, that I wanted to talk about was Jalen Walker from Georgia, who I also watched in my last batch of watching prospects. I think that there's a really windy road to get to the point where Jalen Walker is a Patriot. It involves a trade down, and it involves free agency getting hit out of the park where you really don't have any holes, in which is hard to believe that we're going to get to that
Would be
point.
nice.
And so there's a lot of different ways and avenues and windy roads that you'd have to get to Jalen Walker. That being said, Jalen Walker just in a vacuum really screams like a Vrabel Patriot linebacker, because he kind of plays a little bit like Mike Vrabel. He can play on the line, off the line.
You're the third. So I've only heard 3 comps for Jalen Walker from 3 different people, and they've all been Patriots linebackers, but they were all different. I heard Gerard Mayo, I heard Kyle Van Noy, and now Mike Vrabel.
So if I had to comp him to a Patriots linebacker from all avenues, it's Gerard Mayo. I think from size, he's going to measure out roughly like Gerard Mayo did. And he can play inside. He can play on the line of scrimmage. He can blitz. From everything that you've heard, he's like this very lauded leader and captain and all that kind of stuff as well. Vrabel did it similarly to Mayo, but it was different eras kind of, and they got lighter and with Mayo than with Vrabel. So he's not going to be quite as big as Mike Vrabel is. He's probably going to come in at 6'2", 6'3", 240, 245 pounds. So from that standpoint, a lot like Gerard Mayo, a lot like Dante Hightower just in terms of role, and where you're going to play him on the defensive front. I just look at a guy like Vrabel, though, and just everything that Jalen Walker can do for you defensively in the front seven, play the edge, play inside linebacker, rush in line, blitz up the middle, drop into coverage, cover running backs. Those types of guys are the types of guys that typically, Belichick guys gravitate towards.
So I don't know if we're going to do recency bias players today, but I have one that I guess would be day 2 Jalen Walker.
Yeah.
I can give it now. I don't
just
know if
give
you want me to spoil it. Chris Paul.
Yeah.
From Ole Miss, who was one of the best players at the Shrine Bowl. He's a little bit smaller. I think he came in and he's 6'1", 226. So he's on that smaller side. But if you're playing him next to Juwan Bentley, right, this is a guy that can play sideline to sideline, is a plus player in coverage, can get after the quarterback. He's not a great run defender, but he can be out there.
Yeah.
He's a second round pick, projected second, third round pick, middle of day 2, because just people don't take linebackers high anymore.
Yeah.
But I think he's tremendously talented. He might, I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm missing somebody. He's definitely a third, top 3, 4 linebacker in this draft. I wouldn't put him ahead of Walker. Who else? I'm blanking on a name, but I'll remember it. But I think that kind of player works if you like Jalen Walker. But like you said, just how that works out with where he's projected to go and where the Patriots are is tough. Chris Paul's a guy to know. And then, he was my recent guy a couple of months ago. Barrett Carter from Clemson is another one.
Yeah.
I was missing the kid from UCLA. Swessinger.
Yeah.
Those are probably the 4 best linebackers in the draft.
So Jalen Walker, just to wrap it up on him.
Yeah.
If I had to
Jihad Campbell. That's who I was missing.
Oh, yeah.
Jihad Campbell from Alabama.
Yeah. if I had to pick a Patriot from the past to compare to, it would be Gerard. I think he was a lot like Gerard Mayo, and is probably going to go in a similar spot of the draft as Gerard Mayo. The other one that I would mention quickly from Georgia is Mykel Williams, who, again,
I mean, if you're going to do that trade down to 9 or 10,
really raw.
Yeah.
Really raw. Now, Georgia always has that issue. I hate how Georgia, they neuter their edge rushers at Georgia. They don't let those guys rush. It's annoying. But they'll line them up head up over the tackle, and it's obviously tougher to get on the edge when you're head up over the tackle. So it hurt Trayvon Walker a lot. It hurt Mykel Williams a lot. But Mykel Williams is one of those guys that's really toolsy, really raw. Not quite as like freakishly athletic as Trayvon Walker was, but in a similar mold, I would say, to Trayvon Walker. You give him to Terrell Williams and Mike Vrabel, like they're going to take that ball at Clay and turn him into a good player.
Yeah,
I know that. But again, this is trade down scenarios. This is, things fall in a certain way to get to that point. One last one about the current roster, and then we'll take these last calls and we'll wrap it up. This is a question from Sean in Vancouver, who's a big-time listener. We always appreciate that. He says he's concerned about Ramondre Stevenson and his fumbling. So what can the Patriots do to help Ramondre Stevenson with his fumbling issues? I'm not super concerned with Ramondre's fumbling issues because I trust Vrabel. I think that they're going to recognize that Ramondre Stevenson needs to be here. He needs to be a part of their offense. He needs to be a big part of their offense in terms of volume. And whether it's doing the Kevin Falk where you put the arm bands on, or you get him like the program and he's carrying the football around the facility all the time.
Remember, Damian Harris said he was going to do that and fumble the next game.
Yeah, Damian Harris tried that. Whatever it is, holding the ball in a different spot, just in terms of where he holds the football. Remember Tiki Barber used to hold it like weirdly, all the way up here. Like, whatever the case may be to get the fumbling issues out, I have confidence that in this coaching staff that they're going to kind of throw the kitchen sink at that.
I also think some of it, it wasn't a long time issue for Stevenson. He fumbled 7 times total over his first 3 seasons and 400-something carries. And then he fumbled 7 times last year alone. So I think some of it's just workload. I'm huge on this, that Ramondre Stevenson's been overworked. McDaniel's always very good about making sure his running backs are not overworked. So I think that in some shape or form will help take care of it. You just hope it's not a mental issue at this point.
Yep, agreed. All right, let's get back to the calls. Andy is in Sudbury. What's up, Andy?
Hey, guys. How are you?
Hey.
Good.
Good. So I just have a question about wide receivers in the draft.
Sure.
So are you guys on?
Yep,
go ahead.
We got you. Go ahead.
So yeah, I have a question about wide receivers in the draft. I mean, I would like Ted McMillan with the 4th overall pick, but I could stand trading down to get him, or one of Savion Williams, Jack Beck, or Trey Harris. What are your thoughts on them? Thanks, guys.
Nice list. I wish that Savion Williams participated in the Senior Bowl.
I know.
He didn't, which was a bummer. A lot of that depends with Jack Beck, I think, in particular, on what kind of offense they're going to be. Yeah. If they're really going to try to Ramsify this offense and be that sort of scheme, then Jack Beck makes all the sense in the world. The Rams putting Cooper Kupp on the trade block a couple of days after Jack Beck had a great week at the Senior Bowl does not get lost on me. Yeah. He is a Rams wide receiver. He is a Puka Nacua clone. I don't know if he's going to be as good as Puka is, but he's built like that. He can block. He can play inside in those tight formations and things like that. He goes over the middle. Yeah. He's good at yak. He's good at the catch point. He's a Rams type of a receiver. He's a Niners type of receiver. So if that's the type of offense that you want to run, then I think that he's a great fit for it. I don't think he's a great fit for the traditional McDaniels offense.
In what role?
In either role, because I just
don't think he could be that Jacoby Myers power slot?
Maybe, but I don't look at his route running as precise enough. Okay. I think he's he's a power slot. I think he wins more with physicality and with just overwhelming ability. I think that's probably the difference between him and Puka to me. Puka's a lot more technical than what I saw out of Jack Beck. Now maybe Beck gets there, with training and things like that. But I would say that he's more in that mold if that's the type of offense that they want to run. If they want to run the McDaniels traditional Patriots offense, they need high IQ players. They need great route runners. They need, like the Iowa State guys, like Restrepo, like Matthew Golden from Texas. Like those are the types of guys that I would gravitate.
Still love my guy Kyle Williams, who's still like 800 something on the big board for some reason.
Yeah.
And as for Savion Williams, love the player. Fascinates the hell out of me. McDaniels does not have a good history with scheme touch guys.
So on a scale of 1 to Laviska Shenault, where does he fall on that scale?
Well,
because he reminds me a little bit of Laviska Shenault.
Isn't the scale really on a scale from N'Keal Harry to Cordero Patterson?
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
So I guess that, like, if you told me they were going to draft him as Cordero Patterson, they were going to use him as a running back and a slot receiver, I'd be a little more in. If they were going to try to turn him into like an X, I'd be pretty worried. He's better than Laviska Shenault.
Okay. I just worry that he is one of those.
He's a gadget player.
He's a gadget player.
He's a massive Pop Douglas, basically.
Right, because you read his scouting report, and I haven't done a ton of work on him yet, but you just read his scouting report, and like it's like, oh well, he can play running back, and he can you can use him on scheme touches, and so like Cordell Patterson is kind of the comp. I don't think he's as explosive on kick returns and things like that as Cordell
just
Patterson
offensively,
was.
yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's the comp. All right, feels like Mark in Connecticut. Mark, I feel like you end the show as the last caller every week. I like that.
I appreciate you guys as always. Love you guys.
Thank you.
Just had two quick things for you. I am quite surprised and shocked, and I wanted to know if you guys had any intel. Why would the organization want to relieve these two guys of their duties, Troy Brown and Matthew Slater, which they have been great, I think, pieces for this organization of all time, and I just don't get why they would want to relieve them. And maybe they're bringing in Wes Welker. I don't know. I would love to see that. And then the other thing is Josh Simmons. Would he be available at the end of the first round if the Patriots try to move up into the into the back of the first round like they tried to last year? And I appreciate you guys always.
Thanks, Mark. We appreciate the call. So on the first point with the coaching staff, Troy Brown had quite the fall from grace. He was on the up and up, and wide receivers coach didn't go great for him. I think he's a really good returners coach. The Patriots have had good returners. Obviously, Marcus Jones is a good returner in his own right, but I think he's actually done pretty well when Marcus Jones has been hurt and things like that with developing returners. But wide receivers coach didn't go so well for him, and it kind of stunted his growth from there. Matthew Slater is an interesting one, but I don't believe that him and Vrabel ever really overlapped here, right? Because Vrabel was gone by like 07, 08, and then Slater came in as a draft pick. So they don't have a relationship. Now, could Matthew Slater have stuck on as a special teams coach? Absolutely. But his role on Gerard Mayo's staff was is more of like an assistant to the head coach, advisor type of role as well. He was very involved in that sort of thing. And my take on that is just I think Matthew Slater is being replaced by people closer to Vrabel and more confidants of Vrabel, like a Stretch, John Stryker, or Ryan Cowden in the front office, or things like that.
And I also wonder with Slater, didn't he say something before he retired that he didn't think he was going to go into coaching right away?
Yeah.
And then obviously he did. We were all kind of surprised by that, maybe just wanting to take a step back. By the way, you mentioned when you read Savion Williams' scouting report.
Yes.
The 33rd team just put theirs up.
Yeah.
You want this? You want that? I'm just curious your reaction. Positives.
Yep.
Powerful frame offers straight line explosiveness and contact balance with the ball in his hands. Supreme versatility as a direct snap backfield player, alignment at running back, and ability to split wide. Impressive contested catch resume across entire body of work to win at the catch point. Negatives. Drop rate exceeds 10% for his career. Some frustrating lapses of routine opportunities. Refinement as a route runner requires work. Played in a college spread system with plenty of soft coverage. Does not illustrate desired run blocking contributions on the perimeter that his frame may suggest. He's listed at 6'5", 225 unofficial. Pro comparison, Cordero Patterson.
So the only difference between that scouting report and what Cordero Patterson turned into, I wouldn't say Cordero Patterson's a great contested catch guy. So if Savion Williams is going to add that on top of Cordero Patterson's skill set, but again, I don't think he's as explosive as Patterson is. But if that's the skill set, then I'm more intrigued by it. But the receiver that you just described is anti-Josh McDaniels.
Completely 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, like that is not the type of guy that's thrived with Josh McDaniels.
Another one, Draft Network. Diverse release package, explosive, great short area quickness.
I'm not sure about that.
Position versatile playmaker.
Yeah.
Concerns, raw route runner, concentration drops, lack of production.
Yeah.
Do they have a comparison? They mentioned Deebo Samuel in the write-up, but not as a direct comparison. That's probably the ceiling.
Yeah.
And then I look, Bleacher Report has a ton of plus and negatives. Their comparison, Chase Claypool.
Okay, I think Chase Claypool, that would be better at the catch point.
That also, that takes out the whole reason Savion Williams has all this value is because of the versatility.
Yeah.
So he is Chase Claypool as a receiver. Like, I can see that comparison. But there is more to him than that.
Yeah. Okay, really quickly, Super Bowl pick. Who you got? Eagles, Chiefs.
I feel like it's just dumb to pick against the Chiefs at this point.
Yeah,
but
it is.
Heart says Eagles, but go Birds and all that. But I think the Chiefs are great. I've had fun saying go Birds this week. It's a fun slogan.
Yeah, I like go Birds.
Big Always Sunny guy too. I think the Chiefs are going to win now.
So this game, to me,
it's hard without Kyle Shanahan. It's so easy when I can just be like, the Niners are going to get a lead and then lose.
Okay, all right. I don't know why Kyle Shanahan had to take a stray there.
Because that was my bet last year.
The Eagles have a better football team.
They do. They have a better roster.
I think the Eagles have a better roster top to bottom. But what this is going to come down to is two things. One, can the Chiefs stop Saquon Barkley? They're not going to stop Saquon Barkley. It's not going to slow him down. And really what it is can they limit the explosives? Because Barkley's really good at turning a 10-yard run into a 60-yard run. When you're playing the Eagles, you got to get him on the ground, right? You can't allow him to take those big runs like he did in the
Chris Jones and Saquon Barkley's like the best matchup.
The first play from scrimmage in the NFC Championship game, he takes it to the house. You can't have those types of plays against the Eagles. If you can get the Eagles into third and pass, then Steve Spagnuolo is going to come after Jalen Hurts. We know that.
Right.
Jalen Hurts is one of the worst passers in the league under pressure in terms of how good he is when kept clean versus under pressure, that delta of those two things. One of the worst in the league at it. So the game comes down to, for the Chiefs, can they get Philadelphia an obvious pass? Because if they can get Philadelphia an obvious pass, Spagnuolo can do his thing. He can spin the dial in the pass rush. He can get Jalen Hurts under pressure, and the Eagles are going to have a tough time. In conclusion, I'm taking the Chiefs.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, too much Steve Spagnuolo and too much Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. The coaching, I just trust it so much at this point. It's so consistent. It's so good. I just don't see how a Nick Sirianni coaching staff, even though I love Vic Fangio, I don't see how a Nick Sirianni coaching staff outcoaches that brain trust. I just don't.
Who wins the next Super Bowl?
Like next year?
Yeah.
San Francisco 49ers.
Nope. No way.
And on that note, we will be back next week, same time, same place. We might talk a little bit about the Super Bowl on Sunday, which we're going to watch together. So you can get our notes on the Super Bowl, but we'll also get into heavy draft talk and offseason as we always do. So thanks so much for listening and watching, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.